let's call the meeting to order. And I haven't received the message from tech support so that I know of. And so I'd like to call this Tuesday, July 20th, 2021 meeting of the Monroe County Plan Commission to order. Mr. Wilson, could you please call the roll?
So Larry's actually not with us tonight.
Oh, so Jackie, would you please call the roll?
Sure. And Margaret.
Jackie, I think is it your audio that's causing the echo?
I think if Margaret mutes while I'm speaking, you're good. So Margaret unmutes and no one else speaks, we're good. And then, is that okay? Sorry to add that extra layer.
I will
but yeah.
mute and unmute as I speak.
So I'd like to call the July 20, 2021 meeting to order. And I can go ahead and call the roll. Margaret Clements.
Here.
Jeff McKim.
Here.
Sean Enright Randolph.
Here.
Amy Thompson.
Here.
Dee Owens.
Here.
Jim Stainbrook. Jerry Pittsford.
Here.
Bernie Garitas. And Julie Thomas will not be with us tonight. Okay. So we have 7 members in a quorum.
And let the record reflect that Beth Kate, who is on the city's plan commission, is in attendance as well.
Yes. And sorry, 6 members present at this current time. I think Jim Stainbrook's going to be attending, but not yet.
Thank you. Okay, would you please introduce the evidence?
Yes. I'd like to introduce the following items into the evidence. The Monroe County zoning ordinance as adopted and amended. The Monroe County comprehensive plan as adopted and amended. The Monroe County subdivision control ordinance as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Plan Commission rules of procedures as adopted and amended. And the cases that were legally advertised and scheduled for a hearing on tonight's agenda.
Move we approve the evidence as read. Second.
Jackie, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Jeff and Kim.
Yes.
Sean Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Amy Thompson.
Yes.
Dee Owens.
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Oh, Margaret Clements, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve tonight's, did we just approve the agenda? Yes, we did. So we move now to the first item on the agenda, which is unfinished business, REZ-21-1, the trails at Robertson Farm, a rezone from RE1 to MR. This is the final hearing. So Rebecca, if you're here, would you please update us as to the changes on this petition?
Sure. Thanks, Margaret. I'm going to let Jackie run the PowerPoint presentation. This is a rezone request from a state RE1 to medium density residential. This is the final hearing, and it is for an 44-acre parcel of land in section 20 of Perry Township at 4691 South Victor Pike. So the petitioners are here tonight requesting a rezone to the medium density residential zoning classification. They have been before you in the past with first a request for a PUD and then a request to HR. And after some discussions with planning staff and other input, they have altered their proposal so that it is now a request to the medium density residential. The purpose of the request is to develop the land in order to create attainable middle-class housing in Monroe County. And on this slide, I just included the text from the petitioners officially requesting the change to the MR zone request. Next slide. So petitioners under this proposal are requesting a mix of housing types that include single-family homes. They are anticipating about 125 lots. That is a decrease from their original rezone requests of HR. In the MR zone, it allows for a density of 4.8 lots per acre. And the proposal includes 2 ingress/egress points at South Victor Pike, as well as 1 connection to the Clear Creek Trail and another connection to the Bloomington Rail Trail. Next slide. So because you've seen some different iterations of this proposal, I just wanted to provide the latest updates to you. When the petitioners decided to change their zoning request to MR, they did follow the proper channels as required and did notice for this new revised request. Also in your packet, I know it's a pretty lengthy packet, so wanting to just point out some additions so nothing gets lost in the volume. There has been, since it has changed to an MR request, we did receive additional postcards in support of the MR zoning and additional letters in opposition. So here we have the site conditions map. This is a good bird's eye view of the property. And of course, we're considering the rezone tonight. So individual lot level detail will be looked at in the plating process if this does get approved. But here you can see that when you subtract for roadways and other areas that cannot be built upon, you essentially are left about 27 acres. And if you divide that by the 0.21 lot size, you get about 128 lots. And once again, petitioners are proposing 125 in this development. Next slide. So bringing you up to date on Drainage Board. Drainage Board has heard this proposal. They have reviewed the plans to date. Most importantly to note, the final drainage plan will comply with the new critical drainage watershed requirements. And there are 4 areas designated for detention, and these will allow for adequate storage based on the release rates that were provided. And the existing culvert that is under the Clear Creek Trail at the moment does have adequate capacity for the 100-year flood event. The project will not adversely impact the floodplain, sinkholes, or delineated wetlands. And if there are trees that need to be removed for the construction of detention ponds, they will be replaced at a ratio of 1:1. So that is, those are notes from our MS4 coordinator and some information from the Drainage Board as they considered this proposal. Highway, the petitioners are working with our highway department to get their proposal to a satisfactory state. They are, I think, close at this point to meeting all of the requirements. So we don't anticipate at this point in time any major concerns coming out of the highways review of this plan or proposal. So regarding will serve and capacity letters, CenterPoint will be providing the natural gas, sewer. There is a will serve capacity letter on file from CBU. The water will be provided by Southern Monroe Water Association, and Duke has agreed to provide the electric. So just a note from the Fire Protection District, they aren't going to provide at this point fire hydrants, but the Fire District engineer confirms that capacity for full fire hydrants would require private lines and an entity to maintain them. Sorry, I'm getting flashes on my screen here. Okay. So overall, the planning department staff does give a positive recommendation for this proposal or this rezone request to medium density residential based on the findings of fact, subject to the county highway and drainage engineer reports. So based on finding of fact and in accordance with the Monroe County Comp Plan, staff recommends medium density residential zoning as an appropriate zoning designation for this site. And this recommendation is based on the following. The medium density zoning is a transition zone between the northern higher density neighborhoods and the southern lower density zoning districts. And also the proximity to trails is an asset. And furthermore, the comp plan supports medium density residential zoning. Other approximate parcels are zoned similarly under the comp plan and are currently zoned MR. Next slide. So just a quick review of the meeting timeline, because this has gone through several meeting sessions. It was reviewed by the Plan Review Committee in May, Plan Commission administrative meeting in June, and then back to the Plan Commission regular in mid-June, Plan Commission administrative again on July 6th. That was to hear it as the new request for the MR zone. And here we are tonight at the regular session. And petitioners did request a waiver of final hearing. And so the next step would be going in front of the county commissioners. So tonight we're looking for a recommendation from the Plan Commission related to the rezone request to MR. So options are to vote on the rezone request to medium density residential tonight and waive the final hearing, or do not waive the final hearing and request this case be advertised as medium density zoning at the August PC meeting. So that's kind of the options before you. And so if this rezone request is approved, it will proceed to the county commissioners for a final vote. And if it is denied, a negative recommendation from the Plan Commission, it proceeds to the county commissioners again for a final vote. So that's the sort of sequence of events that happens after tonight. So with that, I will take any questions.
Do members of the Plan Commission have any questions for Rebecca? Mr. Pittsford?
Bear with me, I have several. First of all, I got the impression from one of the emails from Mr. Loftman that they felt like the notification standards did not, or the notifications did not meet the county standards. Is that correct or not? That was
Jerry,
one of his challenges.
okay, sure. And Jerry, Dave Schilling, are you on?
I don't see Dave Schilling on the call at this point. Oh,
I'm here.
Oh, there you are, Dave. Do you want to respond to the Guy Loftman letter stating that the letters were not sent certified mail? Or do you want me to start out responding to that?
Well, yeah, with respect to certified, certified is not required. Accountable mail is all that's required for a PUD outline plan. And generally the rule in Indiana is that if there are notices on the mistake or mistakes on the notice, that those notices are still effective as long as they're not so misleading that people don't have the right to appear and speak. In other words, if the notice is sufficient to give you an idea of what's going on, when it's going on, and you show up and talk about it, then the purpose of the notice has been met, even if there are mistakes on it.
Okay, so can we all agree, and Madam Chairwoman, I'm going to ask your opinion on this as well. Can we all agree that there's no material deviation on the notice that would indicate that the neighbors were not sufficiently notified?
Well, I would like to take that to a vote to the members of the Plan Commission to see if they believe that the notice requirements were met.
Well, then I'm
So-
going to make a motion, Madam Chairman, if I may, that we enter into the record that the notice given was not sufficiently deviating from the material content of the meeting as to be misleading, and that we accept the notifications sent out as sufficient to meet the standard. That is my motion, and I await a second.
I'll second that, but I also have a question.
About this item, Mr. McKim? Yes, please ask the question.
Yes, this is actually a clarification on something that Mr. Schilling said. He specifically said that that accountable mail was sufficient for a PUD outline plan, but this is actually a rezone. I just wanted to make sure that was a misstatement, and he also meant that for a rezone, the mail class of mail that was used was sufficient.
Yeah, the PUD outline plan is a rezone.
Sorry, this is not a PUD anymore,
Right.
Dave. It's
Oh,
just a general
But just
rezone.
a flat out rezone, okay, just in here, let me see. Map amendment and yeah, the notification requirements are the same for both of those items. So it'd be accountable mail for the rezone.
Thank you.
So,
Madam Chairwoman, are we sufficient to continue with the vote, please?
yes, please, Ms. Nestor, would you please call the roll?
Sure, and just to verify with Mr. Schilling, this is a requirement in the rules of procedure, and the notification requirements that were referenced by Mr. Loftman came from the subdivision control ordinance, which is not applicable to a rezone request. So I just want to make sure we're calling the roll on the notification requirements being met. Is that something we can proceed with, Dave, before we hear the petition?
Yes, I believe so.
We'll go ahead and call the roll. Jeff McKim,
Yes.
John Enright Randolph,
Yes, and I'd like to mention that Mr. Stainbrook had left a message in the chat that says unable to access Zoom, so he may not be able to speak or vote. Just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
okay. Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook.
Yes.
I can hear you, Jim. Jerry Pittsburgh,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes,
Okay, so it was approved unanimously that the notice was sufficient.
May I continue with my questions, Madam Chairwoman?
yes, Mr. Pittsford, thank you. Please
All
proceed.
right. Excuse me. My next question is, what is the estimated time of retention of water in those detention ponds that were called into question in so many of the remonstrances against this? I know it was noted in the report, but I wanted to hear it, please.
Noted in the Drainage Board report or the MS4? report?
Yes, drainage board, yes.
Okay.
I started to say M4 coordinator, but I wasn't sure if I had the right number on that.
MS4 coordinator. Jackie, do you think that we can access that report?
Sure, and I think Kelsey's also on the call, but I can get to that in just a second.
I would accept a response from Chelsea.
Hey, Jared, could you repeat your question, please?
I wanted to know what the estimated time of retention of water in the detention ponds would be, because there was an express concern about standing water and the hazard of people being in those ponds and I assume possibly drowning.
Okay, yeah. The detention ponds are going to be designed so that they drain within 48 hours, so 48 hours or less. I will also work with them on standards for certain depth of water. I think the county holds it to 4 feet. But basically, if it gets to a certain depth, then you design benches on it so that you can have not just one big shallow pond, but you'll have safety benches and benches for access and things like that. They will
Okay,
be
so
dry
there
all
is
other
a-
times.
Okay, so there is an opportunity for revision should the drainage not occur in that 48 to plus or minus hours, so
Yes.
that the design would still create a safe impoundment of water. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Next question is Center Point Veteran, because we had a letter from Veteran, but you referenced Center Point.
They did change names, Jerry. I actually have Vectren and switched to Centerpoint, so I can verify that with certainty.
Okay, all right. Well, that was a little shift up that I was not aware of. The next question is, we have to, in my opinion anyway, we have to consider what the timeline is for annexation. We know that our friends in the city of Bloomington are very anxious to begin their annexation, first with the most taxable portions of the former fringe area. But what is their timeline on this area down in Clear Creek? Or do we even know?
Jackie, I mean, I don't,
Timeline for annexation, Jerry, is that what you're asking?
Yes. Is there a stated timeline from City of Bloomington on when they intend to annex in this area? I have long maintained that we have an obligation to zone and build according to that potential for annexation when it's impending. And by that, I mean within a 10-year period of time. So my question is, you know, if they're 10 years or less away from annexing here, we may as well go ahead and zone it as if it's urban.
So this is identified in one of the areas intended for annexation under the latest submittal by the mayor and the city of Bloomington. So this is just the very southern edge of the annexation area. And as I understand it, and I may be wrong, so I can check while we're asking other questions, but I believe that the annexation is to happen all at once. And the timeline for the effective date of that annexation would be 2024.
Okay, so we're within a 10-year period of time when we could conceivably see this piece of property actually considered to be part of the urban planning district of the city of Bloomington. Is that correct statement?
If the annexation does go through and this area is included in that annexation, then it would be in the city's jurisdiction as planned right now in 2024.
So less than 5 years away even.
Yeah, that timeline is.
Okay,
listed.
and
Yeah.
I don't want to belabor the point, but I want to be very clear about what I'm saying here, because we have dealt with this nonsense for as long as I've been on the Plan Commission. And if the city of Bloomington is actually now at a point where they are serious about doing aggressive annexation, then we should quit pandering to the idea that we can zone these things as if they're going to be suburban or even quasi-rural. If the intention is for the city of Bloomington to annex them, then we should treat them as if they're going to be annexed into an urban area and follow an urban format. And that's just where I'm coming from. I've seen this happen now in 2 cases before this one. And I just want to get that on the record because I'm really tired of seeing a situation where we approach this as if we understand what's happening with annexation. And then we're treated as if we don't know anything, despite the hours and days of effort put into these processes, then to be voted down by 2 or 3 people of the county commissioner's office. And I just wanted to get that on the record. And I know that I'm being very strident now. And Madam Chairman, I beg your indulgence, but I just wanted that to be part of it. And to that end, I'd also ask the question, should we just go ahead and waive the final hearing and move this on to commissioners and let them do their deal with it and just quit messing with it? That's going to be my position. If I get to make the motion, I promise you I will be requesting a waiver of the final hearing. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. Are there other members of the Plan Commission who have questions for planning staff? Or any statements they'd like to make in response to Mr. Pittsford's statements?
I have one comment on that. Currently,
Yes.
we're designated as Plan Commission members. We're appointed by the county commissioners, or we are ex officiated by our positions. I'm voted into this chair and into this job. Mr. McKim, he is a representative from our county council. Amy Thompson, she is in this role due to her job as well. And also Julie Thomas is the representative of the county commissioners. And we are the stewards that oversee the growth of this. And we have ordinance now that we're able to implement that may not be the same if it is annexed. And as stewards of, the growth of this community, I find his statement very powerful, and we need to look at what is best for the community in the growth, not what our fears or concerns may be due to what the annexation may, what parts of the county may or may not be annexed. And right now, we're able to have direct input in our ordinances, and which allows us to have more guidance being stewards of this part of the county.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. Mr. Pittsford and then Mr. Stainbrook.
Yes, just really quickly, I wanted to respond to Tron. Tron, at the time when the areas intended for future annexation or the 2 mile fringe was originally established, it was incumbent upon the other local planning organizations to keep that in mind as they move forward. And that is really the reason for my statement. If we have significant reason to believe, and I believe we do now, I think we've seen the limitations of annexations on the city of Bloomington's part challenged in the court system, and they have been given the go-ahead. We see that there's no limit within the Indiana General Assembly on their powers. So if they're telling us they're going there, then I think we should plan as if they are. And that is simply my point. And again, I don't wish to be strident. I just really want this to be brought to the fore so that we quit pretending and spending so much time as if this is not an issue. It is an issue, and it's a significant issue. And if we really want to start a fight to keep these things within the control of the county, then the county ought to be taking a position on the Bloomington or the city of Bloomington's annexation plan.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. Mr. Stainbrook.
Margaret, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
You do hear me.
Very well. Thank you.
I had a little difficulty hearing you, and I'm so perplexed. Although I may have acknowledged that I'm not tech savvy, but I've had an awful time this evening. And having said that, I'd like to take note of Jerry's closing comment and emphasize that this is going to the Board of County Commissioners. We're acting in an advisory role. And I should acknowledge, I suppose, that I also listened carefully to Tron's comment. I believe, though, Madam Chair, that the question is whether it goes to them with our advisory recommendation being yay or nay. Do we recommend, having spent the time that Jerry has alluded to. But okay, point being, this is going forward. This is going forward to the Board of County Commissioners. There's no doubt about that. I understand, Jerry. The question is, does it go forward with a favorable recommendation from this group? Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook, for your clarifying comments. I always find your comments to be very poignant and right on target. Since Mr. Pittsford has discussed annexation and the city's plans, during this process of annexation is one of the few times that the county residents have an opportunity to weigh in, and they can do it through the remonstration process. And we don't know yet if this area will be annexed or will not be annexed. I do know that there are neighborhoods in Area 1B that are mounting a petition campaign and hope to get the 65% of the signatures that would defeat annexation. There are a number of people who don't like the way that the city is proceeding, and there are a number of people in the county who feel that this is their opportunity to have a right to say how the county should be developed. So since you brought up annexation, Mr. Pittsford, let's be accurate. It has not been achieved yet. The city council has not voted on it yet. The county residents have not had an opportunity to remonstrate or even sue the city if they have 51% opposed to annexation. So it's not a done deal. And until that time takes place, I think that we proceed, as Mr. Stainbrook mentioned, with a recommendation of approval or denial and a waiver of the final hearing or not a waiver of the final hearing. And Mr. Pittsford, you have your hand raised, so I'll recognize you again, but thank you very much for hearing me on that point.
Thank you, and I did hear you, Madam Chairwoman. My concern is this: we're planners. We don't act on what's on record. We act on what's potentially on record. And we have a very, very clear indication of an aggressive annexation program that's going to move forward. And we have a very clear record of county commissioners who do not wish to see any kind of urban format development in the area where this development is proposed. So if that's the case, if we're not going to plan as if it's going to be annexed, then the city of Bloomington is going to be hamstrung in their annexation efforts. And if that's what we're after, then great, let's go ahead and do it, but let's apply it universally. So my concern here is when you plan, you don't act as if you know what's going to happen. You act as if you know what is potentially going to happen. And we have a very clear indication right now that the city of Bloomington intends for this part of the county to be incorporated into the urban limits of the city of Bloomington, and we should plan accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. I beg to differ with you on that planning right now. The planning says that it's RE1. That's what this is zoned. Nothing about the land has changed since that RE1 zone was designated for this piece of property. And there's a request on the table to do a medium residential density housing development. And we will proceed with the consideration of the approval or denial of that request. Mr. Stainbrook.
Jim, you're on mute. You'll need to press *9.
*6.
*6.
Stressful evening with this. I shouldn't take others' time to say that I had the computer worked on so that the problem may generate right here with me at home. And I'm sorry about that. But again, I'm listening to Jerry and I think it's helpful, but I don't know myself that the city has a planning designation known as urban. So I thought that just a real good point that in life, for instance, we plan as best we can, but we don't know, K-N-O-W, about tomorrow. The good Lord hasn't given us tomorrow yet. but I just don't know the planning categories. I don't know what. First of all, it is still hypothetical, according to some people who are opposed greatly to the annexation. So, yeah, maybe it's going through. If I had to guess, I'd probably guess and bet my money with, well, I don't want to get into that. I don't like the thought. But it is somewhat hypothetical still whether the annexation will go through. If it were to go through, for my part, I don't know what the possible zoning designations would be for that area by the city's planners, plan commission, and Mayor Hamilton. I know they've got some real good people in the plan department there, in my opinion, but I don't know. I don't know what those people would do. I'm sorry, that's too long-winded to try and make a point. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other members of the Plan Commission have any other comments at this time or questions of staff? I don't see any, so we'll open the floor now to the petitioner. Is the petitioner here or the petitioner's representative, and would you like to address the Plan Commission?
All right, bye. Rebecca, Jackie, can you hear me?
Yes, Kevin, I can hear you, and then I'm promoting Daniel, and then Tech Services. Can you help me promote Donnie, D-O-N-N-I-E?
And then can you also do, please, Mike Carmen?
Okay,
And,
so
Don-
can, oh,
and then also, Jackie, sorry, there's one more, Jeff Fanyo.
Jeff Daniel, okay.
Just wanted to make sure all of them have the ability to speak at any time during this presentation.
Okay, they're all promoted. So Kevin, Daniel, Mike, Jeff, Donnie, who would like to speak first?
I think Donnie's going to go ahead and get started.
Good evening, everyone. Jackie, could you put our presentation on, please?
Yes.
And sorry, Jackie, I think the phone number for it's, do you want me to read you the phone number in case you can't see the name?
Or
I think it might be for Danny. 812-332-8030.
This is Daniel. It worked. Thank you.
Okay, just wanted to make sure everybody, Mike, can you just confirm and everybody confirm that they can talk?
This is Mike Carmen. You should be on.
Winning. All right. Thank you
Jeff
so much,
Fanyo.
Jackie. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, I'll kick it off. Jackie, if you could go to the next slide, please. Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to see you all again, and really appreciate your patience and fortitude as we've continued to refine our plan to meet some of your requests and to work in a very collaborative way with the planning staff as well. We're very proud of the plan we now have and how it's matured up to this point, and we're very pleased that we can take you through it further tonight again. So thank you all for joining. We've talked a lot about the specifics in the past, and we'll get into some of the specifics tonight as well, but wanted to make sure we start off with the vision, since this is, hopefully we'll get a solid vote tonight. And so before that, really wanted to make sure our vision could sink in. And, we talked about what our inspiration is too. And, this neighborhood, amongst our team, we really talk about how we want it to be a new benchmark of quality and a desirable place that has a lasting legacy for Monroe County. And that's been our goal all along. And that's why we put so much effort into this. And that's why we've worked so hard with the plan staff and some of yourselves as well, and the drainage folks and the traffic folks. And, it's been a tremendous effort and we've come a long way. And so, really appreciate everyone's efforts. And, along those lines, like we talked about before, we really want to keep the family focused. This place, this plot of land is such a gorgeous piece of property that was used to raise 3 girls on the Robertson family. And, it's such a great, vision that's going to translate from one family into many more. And so, when we look down the road, that's where we see this neighborhood going. We want to make sure it is attainable for middle-class families. We've dropped the HR request, so we had to potentially lose some of our lower offerings, but we still are very confident that we can build houses that are attainable for middle-class families. We want to make sure we respect and remain well connected to the environment, and being in that setting so close to the trails on 2 sides with the gorgeous trees and the parks that we're going to build, it will be such a beautiful place in the end. And our keystone, the real keystone of this is that it will leave this legacy that will be well known throughout the county, that many families will want to come and live in. Jack, if you go to the next slide. I think everybody's seen us a lot, and again, we appreciate your indulgence and patience. But we did want to just spend a few minutes on all the steps and how long and how much effort that's gone into this process. And so, if you look back, we put that initial submission in, it was a PUD back in November. And since then we've worked again, very collaboratively with all the different resources and personnel to get to where we are today. And so, this thing, just to remind everyone, has matured. Our plan has matured from a PUD to an HR request, and now it's an MR request. And, we couldn't be more proud of that collaboration and that we've obtained a recommendation for approval from the planning staff. And, again, can't say enough, we appreciate all the efforts from that team and yourselves as well. And now we're here now 6, 7, 8 months later, and really can't say as much how much effort has gone into this across the design and engineering effort. So thank you all for your time, and I'll hand it off to Kevin to take you through some of the specifics.
All right, thanks, Donnie. So if you can see here, I guess we're going to try and spend most of our time going through some of the things that have changed since our last meeting, the first meeting of this request. The primary is that we changed from an HR to an MR rezone to develop about 125 homes. Again, we are now, as Donnie said, have been working in lockstep with the planning staff and achieved a recommendation from them, and believe that this is very much in line with the county comprehensive plan. So I know there was a statement made that this land has not changed and it was zoned RE1, but if you look at the comprehensive plan, which was done a little less than 10 years ago, it had always planned on this land being something different than RE1. And we're just trying to achieve that plan. So it allows building of more attainable houses. Again, as Donnie mentioned, we lost some of the ability to do some of the lower offerings when we lost the ability to have smaller lot sizes in specific areas, but we still maintain the 300 to 400 range. And that is, versus an RE1 zone that would be, over $700,000, which again, I believe everyone saw last time and is in our backup slides. That is a very saturated market currently, so not something that the county is looking for. The second bullet on drainage design, again, was approved by the Drainage Board. It meets all the new critical watershed requirements and, reduces runoff by more than 80%. So I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but given some of the storms that have happened in the last month, I think this would be a welcome addition to the area. Aligned plan for improvements on South Victor Pike with the county and highway engineers to not impact the traffic in the area. Again, I think, there was just, as I mentioned at the beginning, we do have approval from them with the upgrades that are proposed, that is an approved plan, and they have given us our blessing. So that is fully achieved. South Victor Pike, has a 90-foot right of way and is designated as a major collector. So I think, this in the planning phase, when the county laid out the roads and the highway department laid out the roads, this was always indicated to be a road that would increase in size and be able to handle more traffic. So we did some looking at estimated with 125 homes and found that the estimated is at peak hour. So this would be rush hour timeframes in the morning and evening, would be 98 trips per peak hour. So if you think about that, that's adding about 1.5 cars per minute, which, as you can imagine, is not a significant increase for a road of that size, and really does not, again, given the experience and expertise of the highway engineers, believe that, with the added upgrades will not have an impact to the local community. Confirmed, another question last time was insurance rates. I think the statement was made that they would be significantly higher because of what we were planning. We found that to be not true when we did the research. Confirmed the insurance rates are not significantly impacted by allowing parks to be open to the community. And this is primarily because whenever an insurance company supports an HOA, they always assume that any park is open to the public, because as you can imagine, it's very difficult to keep people away. So they always err on the side of caution, which is primarily how insurance works. So, and then any of the other risks they believed could easily be managed. So the HOA insurance, we don't believe is an impact and should not be a problem, as was suggested or requested last time. Confirmed no significant impacts from karst, wetlands, and floodplains, as the development will not disrupt them. So again, I think you guys heard from the expert, Jason Crothy. He indicated, that this area and land is no different than the rest of the Monroe County that has similar karst features, does not anticipate finding new karst features during construction, and is very confident that the development has protected not only the karst features, but the wetlands and the floodplains associated with this area. The unique amenities planned to add the community anchor. And again, we talked about these before, but some of the pictures are in the backup for those of you who have not seen. The community park, the dog parks, community orchard, garden, etc. So just a real focus, as Donnie mentioned, on being a keystone of the community. And the last thing was a revised development plan with the trails, many times over 8 months. And we really have focused a lot on the feedback from our neighbors, planning staff, and the planning commission members. So I think we mentioned last time, but say it again, that we've answered over 200 plus questions from our neighbors. We've given them every piece of information that we have. And in fact offered to provide them drainage information, all the details about our drainage, and received no takers on that offer, but did offer that out. And yeah, the next slide. Thank you, Jackie. So this is just a summary of the change to the MR rezone from RE1. So if you remember last time, we had a similar slide that was HR rezone with a cap of 160 lots to RE1. So just go through this. The MR rezone is aligned with the comprehensive plan objectives, which I think Rebecca very eloquently articulated. The MR rezone is aligned with recommendation by the planning staff. The MR rezone increases the trail's ability to meet the intent of the comprehensive plan, which says housing choices among the full spectrum of demographic groups, which is not really possible in RE1. You can imagine there's a lot more diverse individuals that can handle $300,000 to $400,000 homes versus 700,000 plus homes. Medium density residential allows the best pricing and more attainable homes versus current zoning RE1. So you can see the updated details from the MR zoning plans on target pricing. So if you look to the right, the picture on the right, again, you can kind of see this is the new layout. This would be right now showing 125 lots. And gives an indication of our target lot sizes. You can again see that our average lot size in the blue area is about 0.22, and in the green area about 0.25. The MR rezone allows the trails to meet the needs of the county's families. Currently have very few home offerings in the 300 to 400 range, and it is aligned with the Planning Commission President Margaret Clemens' comments to build more single-family housing to meet the needs of our true constituents, as the trails is 100% single-family homes. And I'll let Danny take this slide.
Hi, everybody. This is Daniel with Bynum Fanning Associates. Wanted to talk a little bit about traffic. I think Kevin has already talked about this, but the kind of road widths that we'll see out here are similar to other road widths that you'd see around the county that have two-way traffic. This is considered a major collector, so it's built to collect traffic on the south side of Bloomington. And we've been working closely with the highway engineer, and there will be a need for left turn lanes into our development. So we are going to introduce those, and everything was approved through him on that plan. Just to reiterate, this will introduce about 98 trips at the peak hour. So that's only the worst possible hour. Again, that's probably around that 5 to 6 time frame when people are coming home from work. But total through the day, that there could be about 5 to 6 trips per house for the whole day. And also to reiterate that those numbers are created from the ITE trip generation manual that highway and traffic engineers use to develop an expectation for traffic in an area. And so that's not taken into account, though. We haven't lowered those numbers with the consideration. I know I do, and I know some of the other of you do bike to work from time to time. I do myself. And so that would take those trips off of that road, being next to the two trails and a direct route into the heart of Bloomington. So, but we kept that as the ITE trip generation manual, but that's all I'll speak on that for now.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Yeah, I think again, the key focus there, what Daniel's saying is that we believe that really truly those, given other roads and other locations, that this is really something that can very easily be managed with the right engineering. And we believe that with collaboration with the highway department that we have done that and will continue to do that. All right, so final slide here. I think, just trying to summarize everything of where we are. Again, 120 to 130 single family homes. Again, just trying to allow people with the owners who will own these homes the opportunity to invest in the community and in the county in this area. The Trails is focused on high quality attainable homes. We've talked about this many times, but it is really important to us. The neighborhood will feature amenities that will set a new benchmark for families to enjoy. The development plan is truly guided by and follows the comprehensive plan. We really have utilized a number of local experts and will continue to do so throughout the development to get what we believe, and I think a number of other people believe, is truly a world-class development. Planning staff has recommended approval. Again, Donnie mentioned the timeline that it's taken us to get there, and the work that we've done with them. So we were really appreciative of their support. We have had just a significant amount of collaboration with the neighbors over the last 7 months. There's been obviously a few that we understand are not going to get on board with what we're trying to do, and totally respect that and understand that. One of the things that we did want to do over the last probably, was it 3-4 weeks, was make sure that everyone around us, and this was 40 plus people, in the surrounding area, had the actual latest information. Is not everyone has the time to come to these meetings and see all the presentations. So we sent it on to the planning staff as well, but we sent a letter, a 3-page letter as well as a 7 or 8 page package of some of the details in here to ensure that all the neighbors had the latest information. So we've spent as much time and money as we can to do that, as well as set up a website for them to review the latest slides, and an email address and phone numbers for them to contact us if they have any questions or concerns. So we really have taken their feedback and input seriously, and we do truly believe that what we are going to do is going to build a better community in the area, and that there's been a lot of inaccurate or false information or unclear information out there. So we wanted to make sure that everyone had the latest information. And the small modifications to South Victor Pike as a major collector will really accommodate the additional traffic. And our robust design will reduce rainwater effects significantly. So we do truly believe that the unfortunate storm event that happened on June 18th, that we would be able to reduce a lot of the local associates with us. So, and then I think, the last piece in here, before I read one of the letters from our local neighbors, is, the density. I think that, there's been a lot of talk about density in the area, that it's, in the past meetings, the discussion was that we are more dense than the surrounding neighborhood. We have, I think, shown that's not the case. Our actual density currently is 2.8 lots per acre, which actually is akin to low density residential. So again, we really do believe that this is a good medium. It's a good compromise between what everyone is looking for, and the amount of work and collaboration that has gone into this is really important. So I'm going to jump to reading a letter from one of our 3 neighbors. So our 3 closest neighbors have all given us significant support in what we're doing. So I'm going to jump to page 204 in the package, if anybody cares to go there. And it's a letter from Mr. Kiefaber. So it just says, "To whom it may concern, I am directly adjacent property owner of the Robertson Farm. We share a fence, and I support REZ 21-1. The developers have shared their plan with me, and I find it extremely well thought out and very considerate of the surrounding neighbors. Specifically, their plans for drainage to reduce the runoff by a very large amount will be a big help to the surrounding properties. I have heard concerns from others on traffic and do not believe 125 families will make a large difference on Victor Pike, especially with the enhancements the developers intend to
This is
provide."
not an appropriate place to be reading letters in favor of or remonstrations against the proposal. If the person is interested to attend the meeting or submit that letter in writing for those in favor or those opposed to the proposed project, that it would be an appropriate thing to do, but not to have you read the letter on their behalf. I'm sorry, Mr. Schmidt.
Okay, I'm just finishing my presentation, Ms. Clements.
I'm sorry, Mr. Schmidt. That's not an appropriate part of your presentation to include the comments from the public at that time. They're not invited yet. So if you would conclude with your own words, that would be an appropriate thing to do.
Okay, I'm not sure the basis for that, but I will conclude. So I guess the conclusion we're going to continue with is, we believe that you can see in the remonstrance there is a significant amount of remonstrance. However, a lot of it is duplicative and or old and outdated. So I think I'd like to maybe pass it over to Danny, who is going to speak on behalf of the storm that happened on June 18th, and maybe give a little bit of perspective about what we believe we would be able to see in this area versus some of the other developments that he's been working on.
All I wanted to add is that I regularly, during the storm that I believe was on a Sunday night that had a large flooding impact, I did go out to one of our sites, the Wick Apartments project, to take a couple of measurements and see how high some of those storm events got in some of our ponds. And it was in line with what we had anticipated in our calculations. and we did not have any flooding in that area because of that. So the calculations that we're giving you, we believe will help. Obviously may not solve the flooding that happens downstream, but we do anticipate this will help the runoff coming to Clear Creek by about 5 times, partially because of the new requirements of the county for the critical watershed, in line with possible global warming and events, and it's appropriate to have that amount of detention on our site. So that's all I'll add to that at this time.
Thank you very much. And now, do members of the Plan Commission have questions for the petitioner or the petitioner's representatives?
I have just one. Sorry, I wasn't able to raise my digital hand.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph.
Daniel, Mr. Butler, would you speak, and if you're not exactly sure, could Kelsey Fatonia speak to when about did we just change the rates for drainage in a critical drainage area? That was something recent, and I just wanted to make note.
That was October 2020.
Sorry, go ahead.
October 2020.
So my point there is we have heightened the release rate in our critical drainage areas through the Drainage Board, which I'm also an ex officio member of, just recently. So they are now meeting higher flow rates than, or more restrictive, I'm not sure the proper term right there, than what was just previously allowed for other developers in this area prior to that date.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. Are there any other questions from members of the Plan Commission to the presenters and to the petitioners? If there's none, I'd like to open the floor to the public comment, and each commenter has 3 minutes to speak. And we are asking first for comments from those in favor of the petition, and then we will hear from those opposed to the petition. Each person has 3 minutes to speak. So if members of the public could raise their hand, and staff, if you would be so kind as to help to organize the presentations. I think Mr. Andreessen had his hand raised first, and if you could put up the clock for the 3 minutes.
Tech Services, do you just want to have the clock as your screen share, or do you want me to screen share the 3 minutes? Perfect, thank you.
Hi, my name is Christine Andreessen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and I am the third daughter of Don and Jan Robertson. Jan Robertson is the property owner, and I wanted to speak in favor of this development, proposed development. From the earliest age, I was told by my parents that the farm, as we called it affectionately, or the property, would be perfect for development. As I grew, I watched development happen around us. Across the street, Earl Moore's place was subdivided. Later, the Bailey Dairy Farm was subdivided on that road. And then later, the Deckard place was created into the Eagle View neighborhood. Our family viewed this growth as good growth that made sense. It also allowed for further family discussions of the potential for developing the farm. Having this development become attainable housing as the trails at Robertson Farm is ideal to allow families and individuals and empty nesters to enjoy this land makes sense, and it truly matches the vision I heard about as I grew up and as my parents wanted. But it also is more than just this, because not just more than 2 years ago, I moved into a very similar neighborhood. As empty nesters, my husband and I decided that we would downsize. We wanted something that would be attainable, and our home is in a very similar neighborhood. We have less yard work, yet we have trees that were part of our development. We have shared amenities, we have a thriving HOA, and we have an efficient home. Our neighborhood is composed of about half empty nesters and half young families and individuals. We became a community, and because of this, I am the demographic of this neighborhood. This would be an ideal place to develop because of the trail, and I believe that my parents would be very pleased to know that many could enjoy the trails with convenience. We enjoyed the trails on an almost daily basis, and allowing a neighborhood to do that seems wonderful. The other thing is that the trail creates a very nice buffer to the adjacent property owners, as well as the creek. So they have an unusual division, in my opinion. So I hope that you will support this development and consider it, because it would allow families to have energy efficient homes, develop a sense of community, enjoy the trail, enjoy amenities, be closer to work and schools, to experience a safe place to grow and to learn and enjoy Monroe County, just like I had as I grew up. So I want to thank the planning staff for recommending approval, and I encourage you to improve this to the next step. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Andreessen. Is there another member of the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Yes, Andy, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. My name's Andy Walker. I've spoken a few times on some of the basics that the developers have already covered, but something I'd like to mention is these guys have worked really hard in trying to craft something that would get planning staff approval. They've basically come at it from a standpoint of, hey, what do we got to do to, garner approval and create, what the county needs. And I think they've been given a lot of direction by the planning staff, and the planning staff's approved it. So it seems to make a lot of sense to me. And, one other thing, earlier in this meeting, it was mentioned, hey, we don't know what the city is going to do with this in terms of density in the future through annexation. I think it's clear we all know what the city's going to do with it. It's going to be a lot denser than 125 units on the 44 acres when the city gets a hold of it. So, maybe this is the county's chance basically to get a density that makes sense to the county versus what's going to make sense to the city in 2 years, because I think it's pretty clear it's going to be a lot more dense than what's currently being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this proposal? If there are none, I'd now like to open the floor to those in opposition to this petition, and each speaker will have 3 minutes. Mr. Loftman.
Sorry that I was muted. My name is I don't see the click.
We can hear you, Mr. Loftman.
Very good. My name is Guy Loftman. I live at 4835 South Victor Pike, right next door to the Robertson Farm. At page 243 of tonight's packet, petitioner says the drainage design of our development will reduce runoff by more than 80%. Whatever the effect on the runoff rate, it certainly won't affect the total runoff. At page 245, the text estimates about 100 trees will be removed, but the accompanying diagram shows that all trees in the buildable area will be removed. Examining the aerial photo on page 14, it looks like approximately 200 trees will be removed. Page 246 says South Victor Pike was designed as a major collector. This is not true. It was designated a major collector because of its location and use many years after it was designed and built. The drawing at page 246 shows lots as small as 0.14 acres, even though the minimum lot size for medium density residential is 0.21 acres. Petitioner was instructed to send new notices, but the notices were wrong. They haven't updated the signs. They continue to not tell the public accurate information. I think it's unwise to place serious responsibilities in the hands of people with no subdivision development experience who can't get their facts straight and who consistently get them wrong in their own favor. If the proposed drainage plan was responsibly installed and maintained, it would reduce the release rate of stormwater so long as there wasn't too much water. Should work fine with a few inches of rain, but it is equally clear those features will not work in a storm of 5 or 6 or 7 inches. We've had 2 of them in the last 2.5 years. The June 22nd Herald Times quotes Monroe County Fire District Battalion Chief Jason Allen concerning recent flooding. The issue was that so much water was dumped so fast, and when that happens, storm drains back up, retention ponds overflow, ditches alongside roads start to fill up, and it all happens so quick the water can't seep into the ground. It will find a path to follow. Petitioner's plan doesn't help if there's too much rain. We know that every square foot of impermeable surface will hurt in the major stormwater event. The responsible approach to develop is to minimize impermeable surface. MR zoning is too intense. Thank you all for your work and your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Loftman. I'd like to recognize now Patty and Dave Bush.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Patty Bush, and I live at 1250 West Church Lane. I'm an adjacent property owner to this petition site. Clear Creek and all who reside near it are experiencing rising stormwaters and flooding during high precipitation events. The pictures of flooding within your packets, now part of the public record, are proof of an existing problem. Development upstream has contributed to this issue with heavy density and the impervious surfaces that come with it. It is evidence of incompatibility, an example of what isn't beneficial for residents downstream. Monroe County experienced 2 significant flooding events, February 2019 and June 2021. These rainfalls exceeded 5 inches and caused widespread flood damage to property, infrastructure, and sadly, loss of life. The data indicates this trend will continue and worsen over time due to climate change. REZ-21-1 has a drainage plan, which includes 4 detention basins. These basins are inadequate for precipitation events similar to February 2019 and June 2021, as previously stated by the MS4 coordinator. A broader approach is needed in order to protect streams, watersheds, and property owners downstream. Currently, a drainage plan for the site itself is all that is considered, rather than how developments affect Clear Creek and the entire watershed. Alternative solutions for vulnerable areas include less density, like RE1, higher water infiltration and purification through green space with mature trees, and drainage systems that meet and exceed current weather conditions. Monroe County's definition for medium density residential, MR district, states to protect the environmentally sensitive areas, including floodplain, watersheds, karst, and steep slopes, and to maintain the character of the surrounding neighborhood. 125 remonstrators are opposing REZ-21-1 due to concerns regarding increased traffic, construction noise, and flooding. Commissioners, please vote no to REZ-21-1. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. Are there additional members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please raise your hand. Is that Mr. Bush? Is Mr. Bush wishing to speak?
Yes, he is.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Please, we'd like to hear your thoughts.
Okay, thank you. As have been mentioned, I'm Dave Bush, and I live at 1250 West Church Lane, immediately next door to the Robertson Farm. And I'd like to reiterate that the list of objectors to this proposed rezone continues to grow, with 125 objectors as of 7/8/21. 57 of them live adjacent to or within a quarter mile of the petition site. And I know some of those were submitted back in March, but that was because the petitioners started out as a PUD and they were opposed to that, and then it morphed to a high res, and then it's morphed to a medium res. So I think the objections are relevant. And I submitted a flood picture portfolio. It's on pages 49 to 71 of your packet. Much media coverage has already been dedicated to this event. However, I purposely focused my photos on the area near the Robertson site. These photos show the damage that can occur when heavy rains fall into Clear Creek watershed in a short amount of time. And I do acknowledge that the current plan for the trails includes detention basins. However, the proposed design will be ineffective in preventing the site runoff associated with recent flooding of June 19th or the flooding of February 2019. I would like to challenge the county planners and the commissioners to raise the bar with appropriate flood control requirements in critical watersheds. Merely requiring developers to meet the minimum standards is doing county residents an injustice, as heavy rain events are becoming more and more common. I would like to propose the county planners and commissioners adopt a best practices approach to flood control design in critical watersheds, rather than requiring developers to meet a minimum standard. As development continues in the county and within the Bloomington city limits, careful attention must be paid to how flood control methods are designed and function county-wide. Otherwise, flood damage, as we experienced last month, will be an all too familiar occurrence. I urge you to vote no on REZ-21-1. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this proposal? And staff, are you also checking the telephone dialers in?
Margaret, this is Jackie. I am checking the email, and then anyone that's by phone wishes to speak. Is it tech services? Can they just go ahead and alert us in some way on the phone?
I don't think so, but it also looks like the only number that's calling in right now is from the county work phone.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anyone else, Margaret.
Okay, so then we've completed our public comment period, and we take it back to the members of the Plan Commission for further discussion. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw very briefly Mr. Carmen's hand was raised.
Well, Margaret, this would not be as member of the public, it'd be on behalf of petitioner in response to comments you just received. Are you going to allow the petitioner to have any further comments in light of the public comments you received?
Margaret, you're muted.
Okay, normally we don't at this time, Mr. Carmen, but I will allow it because you've requested it, and to be gracious, I will allow it. So
Well, thank you. I'll try to be very brief. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted, remonstrators certainly are entitled to speak and to say what they say. It is, I mean, it's a matter of strictly law. This is not supposed to be zoning by applause meter and count noses. It's what the issues that are raised and presented as facts that you should consider, and I trust that you will, and I would encourage you to do that. But I want to just keep this short. You're probably tired of hearing it. I certainly am, and I'm tired of cliches. But you know, if we talk about COVID-19, what we're all tired of hearing: trust the science. Trust the science. If you don't trust the drainage board, if you don't trust those hardworking professionals on the drainage board, then they ought to be disbanded. They serve no purpose. And those startling pictures that were in the demonstration packet about the 1819 flood ended with a question: seen enough? I've seen enough. I hope you have too. And what you saw is situation normal. What's going to continue and continue and continue until something gets developed that deals with that water. And that's what this project does in part. And that's the reference. The guy was correct. It is reduction of 80% at the rate of runoff. It doesn't eliminate the water. It still has to go someplace. It's just in a controlled manner to prevent what you saw in those photographs. There is no drainage plan that's going to survive a biblical flood. It's just not going to happen. And you don't even try to plan for it. We could stop the Mississippi River from flooding its banks and flooding half of East St. Louis. It's those things, if they happen, they happen. But that doesn't mean you go in a hole and do nothing. The Drainage Board took a hard look at this. The MSR4 coordinator has. There's a drainage plan that is viable, workable. It helps solve the problem, but it's not alone. One of the properties south of this, just the other side of the trails, is a 5-acre piece. It's one of the remonstrators. I took a look at the PRC today, the property record card. That property has 15,000 square feet of impervious surface and 5 pole barns, a house, and 1,200 linear feet of driveway. There's not a detention pond visible in the aerial photographs. So that property drains toward the creek, which is on the south side of the trail. They can do what they choose with that property. That's not the point. But there are a lot of contributors to this. This farm is going to be part of the answer if this can get developed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmen. And in all fairness, because I have allowed the petitioner to speak and the people in favor to speak, and only one occasion did I allow those opposed to speak, and then I allowed the petitioner's representative to speak again. I'm going to open up the floor to see if any of the commenters opposed to this proposal would like to rebut Mr. Carmen. So, and then the public comment portion will be finished. So if there's a member of the public who would like to speak in response to what Mr. Carmen just said, please raise your hand. And I'm not able to see the participants at this time, Jackie and Tech Services. So your assistance would be appreciated if you see a raised hand.
There are no raised hands.
Okay.
Madam President.
Who is speaking?
I, Donnie Atkins.
I'm sorry, Mr. Donnie. We are turning now to the members of the Plan Commission. And members of the Plan Commission, I'm sorry,
Yes.
Mr. Donnie. Are you
If we could
speaking
respond
again and
to some of the other
interrupting
comments.
over us again? You're not recognized. I'd like to turn back to the members of the Plan Commission for further discussion among ourselves and any other further questions of staff. And I can't see the participants in my screen right now, but perhaps, oh, there we go. The panelists, if you would please raise your hand in order to speak and discuss this petition further.
Looks like Mr. Pittsford and then Ms. Owens has their hand raised.
Okay, Mr. Pittsford.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. I thought I'd gotten used to this, but I'm not, apparently. I had 2 questions that arose from Mr. and Mrs. Bush's comments. Number one, and I'd like to address these to our MS4 coordinator, Kelsey, and is it Latonia? Is that correct?
Yes, Latonia.
Okay, thank you. Number one, what do you believe is going on upstream that is causing these flooding incidents in the Clear Creek area? And then the second question is, Mr. Bush called into question best practices. Are we exercising best practices, and are we meeting those standards of best practices downstream from the urbanized area of the city of Bloomington to address the flooding that they are creating?
Yeah, so I want to say that these critical area release rates are in line with some of the most stringent release rates in the state now. Prior to October 2020, every single new development or redevelopment site only had to match pre-development conditions to their post-developed conditions to the pre-development conditions. So not putting any type of restrictions on how fast the water leaves the site. So we contracted Christopher Burke Engineering, in my opinion, some of the best engineers in the state who have worked with multiple stormwater utilities around the state to help us come up with representative release rates for our entire county, plus the more stringent release rates, which is what this project is being held to, for critical watersheds. So basically Clear Creek, our two terminal sinkholes on the west side, Jackson Feet Creek, Kerr Creek. So the areas where we have the most flooding issues, the highest stakes, are protected with more stringent measurements. In addition to that, we also have a long-term drainage plan for the county that was created in 2016. But I just want to state that the best practices that this site is being held to, it's meeting the most stringent standards that we've come up with so far. And we haven't really had any new developments meet these yet because they were just enacted, like I said, less than a year ago. So it's nothing that we've seen before. And we are doing things to make sure that we're protecting our sensitive flood-prone areas. But with that said, it's only for new development and redevelopment projects. So anything that was developed previously is meeting old standards, and or anything developed a long time ago, such as downtown Bloomington, you're not seeing the detention. But yeah, that's.
If I may be permitted,
as a member of the drainage board, I would like to add to that.
I'm sorry, Tron, but I'd like a follow-up question, if I may, please.
Oh, absolutely. It just goes in line with your question, just as a member of drainage board. That was a big question for Kelsey, but I'll hold.
Okay, thank you, sir. What I wanted to ask is that if all the places upstream had been meeting the requirements that we're putting on this property, would we be seeing these same problems? And the second part of the question is, does this development actually help to mitigate the failures of those previous standards upstream of this development? Thank you. And that's.
I'm going to jump to your second question and say yes, that is the reason why the Drainage Board pursued more stringent release rates, is to mitigate the flooding issues that we're seeing. The first question, I don't think I can answer, honestly. As with many urban areas that have been developed over time, I cannot imagine how to correctly answer that question, sir. I think in a perfect world with as much space as you want and probably a lot of green roofs and underground detention, possibly, yes. But that would be a huge engineering feat. And I have yet to imagine any city that would even be close to meeting that. But
well, your lack of an adequate answer is an answer in and of itself. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
If you would allow me to add on to the end of that, as a member of the drainage board, I think there's one critical point that is just being a little overlooked. That
yes,
Thank you.
Yes.
We moved forward that amendment to the heighten our critical drainage areas in the midst of rewriting an ordinance. So we didn't wait until the whole ordinance was done. We moved this measure forward immediately so we could take action. So I just would like to make that point relative. We're in the midst of a new drainage ordinance, but we knew that we needed to heighten these release rates in our critical drainage areas. And we moved that forward immediately from the drainage board. And so we could set better minimum standards. And you have to ask someone to meet the minimum standards. If they go above and beyond, that's great, but we have to set appropriate minimal standards. And so we amended the drainage ordinance to do that immediately before waiting until the rewrite was finished. And I think that's a big component, making sure that the county or people are aware the county are taking those steps to address these concerns immediately.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. Ms. Owens?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to point out just that, we're not automatrons. We're supposed to listen to neighbors and positive and negative, and that's part of our jobs. If that listening and that consideration were not necessary, it wouldn't be allowed, correct? So I don't need admonition from anyone about doing my job. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the Plan Commission who would like to make any comments?
Jeff McKim has his hand.
Yes, Mr. McKim?
Thanks. I just wanted to make sure I understand, since the distinction was made during one of the public comments of best practices versus minimum standards. And I just, to follow up on something that Mr. Enright Randolph mentioned, is it correct to say that our minimum standards essentially incorporate best practices, or best practices are incorporated in the minimum standards at this point?
Mr. Enright Randolph, would you be so kind as to answer that question?
I'll defer to our MS4 coordinator, Kelsey.
Kelsey,
Yes,
we look
yes.
forward to hearing from you.
Yes, the drainage ordinance requires these best practices to be implemented on site during construction and post-construction, so permanent stormwater practices. These are structural measures that are in place to manage the stormwater according to our standards. The minimum standards are stated in the drainage ordinance or other policies using the best judgment of the drainage board and others. So yes, that's my answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the Plan Commission who have any additional comments or questions? I'm going to add my say here. Number one, I also echo what Dee Owens said about taking very seriously the concerns of the public. They're stakeholders in this community, and their lived experience in that area is important to me. And I think they have good recommendations and good observations. And I think that it's important that we weigh their concerns in our deliberations. And that's one of the purposes of inviting them to speak to us, number one. Number two, I remain concerned about the utility running through the property, the road traffic, the homeowners association responsibility for big ticket items. I've had the pleasure to walk around the county and see a lot of PUDs that have been approved with homeowners association responsibility for maintenance of big ticket items. And in some places it's not going so well. And I think that that's one of our duties, to kind of foresee and to plan for and to approve projects that are not going to place at risk our community members' assets and their treasure and their property. So although I appreciate the professionalism and the best guesses and the best planning that, and the best science that people are employing on these fragile lands, I don't necessarily see that it's working out so well in many subdivisions. So, so with that said, those are my comments. I'm number one, intending to vote no, and I am also intending to vote no against the waiver of the final hearing. So I would like to hear any other comments from any of the other members of the Plan Commission. And if there are any outstanding questions, let's just either speak or take it to the vote. Oh, Mr. Smith, who is Mr. Smith? Is he on our Plan Commission?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Smith. The time for public comment has finished. And if you're part of the petitioners group, that time for presentation has finished as well. So are there other members of the Plan Commission who would like to say anything to ourselves or to the planners or to the petitioners? If not, let's have a motion.
So it looks like Amy Thompson has her hand raised, then
Yes,
Jerry
Amy,
Pittsburgh,
thank
and
you.
Jim Staver.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
I would just add that I too take to heart all the comments of the folks who have taken the time to share their thoughts with us, and I appreciate that. I do think that this area is going to be developed. A higher density makes sense because I do believe it will be annexed. And when we created the comprehensive plan, it has the services that we identified as being necessary for higher density. If I had a magic wand, development would stop in Monroe County, and we'd turn back the clock to the time that I grew up in here. But the clock is not stopping. People continue to want to live and work here, and I think we need to consider areas where there are amenities that can serve those higher densities. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. For some reason, I can't see the hands raised, Jackie. So if you would be so kind as to call on the members as they
Sure,
wish
sure.
to speak.
Mr. Pittsburgh?
Madam Chairwoman, I'm prepared to make a motion, and I will stand down if anybody would like to add comments. But if there are other motions, I would request that I have the right to the first motion, please.
Mr. Stainbrook? Jim Stainbrook, would you like to speak?
Yes, Madam Chair, can you hear me, Margaret? Jackie, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Jim.
Well, I'd like to go back just now to Jerry, but even earlier than that, I think that Jerry rightfully acknowledged, recognized, and shared that we've asked a lot of questions and we've listened a lot. We've deliberated, and this is the point at which we're ready to try to come to some conclusion for the commissioners. But I would like to add, having said that, I'd like to refute my own point there, or at least injure it by saying on the HOAs, having lived in Florida for 10 years and in a condominium on the 6th floor, and with recent history and with our own history in surf and sand in Sarasota on Lido Key, if you're ever out that way, it's a nice area. And I'm not paid a stipend by the Chamber of Commerce there either, but we had a lot of trouble. HOAs do have, and this tragedy in Miami now, this really shows the letter from the president or chairperson of the HOA, the homeowners association, they didn't have the reserves. And as I say again, we've experienced that personally during our own time in Florida. But again, that's too long-winded just to make the point that's one thing about which we've asked. That's one thing to which we've listened. And I have a major concern about the HOA. But there are all of these things to which Jerry alluded that have gone on and on here, several meetings. And so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook.
Mr. McKim?
Mr. McKim?
I apologize. I'm going to defer to Jerry. I was going to make a motion, but I'm going to let him.
Mr. Pittsford?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. In the case numbered REV-21-1, a request for a rezone for medium density residential located at 4691 South Victor Pike, comprised of 44.07 acres, currently zoned as state residential, with a request to be rezoned to medium residential in Perry Township, Section 20, an unplatted lot, which falls under the comprehensive plan designated as Monroe County urbanizing area mixed residential. I move that we move this forward to the commissioners with no recommendation and with the waiver of the final hearing. That is my motion.
Is there a second? If there's none, your motion has failed. I think the members of the Plan Commission would like to forward a recommendation.
Members of the Plan Commission on case REV-21-1, rezone from medium density residential, rezone to medium density residential. I move that we forward this petition to the commissioners with a positive recommendation and waive the final hearing.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Nestor, would you please call the?
Yes. John Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
No.
Jim Stainbrook,
No.
Jerry Pittsford,
No.
Margaret Clemens,
No.
Jeff McKim.
Yes.
Okay, motion fails 3-4.
Okay, thank you very much. We move on now to the next item on the agenda, which is PUO-21-1. This is the P&G Planned Unit Outline Plan. This is the preliminary hearing, and the waiver of the final hearing has been requested. Ann Crecelius, if you'd be so kind as to present this, we'd be grateful.
Margaret, I'll just reference just for the last case, in case there are those in the public who wish to come back. This will be automatically forwarded to the August Planned Commission meeting for a lack of a majority vote. And since we don't have all 9 members present, and the vote was not 5 in favor or against, we're going to go ahead and proceed to the next case. So it will be heard again at the August 17th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for saying that. So now,
so this is the P&G Plan Unit Outline Plan. It starts on page 199, so get ready. This is the preliminary hearing. The petitioner's representative did withdraw their request for a waiver of final hearing today. Now, I did have some technical difficulties, so I'm looking at my phone and I'm also looking at my screen. So the property is 4.9 acres. It is currently developed and is operating as the Seneca gas station. It is accessed from South Victor Pike and is within about 500 feet of Victor Pike and State Road 37. So the petitioner is representing presenting that it would be called a PNG PUD. The main use of the site would be what they call a truck stop small. Currently, the uses proposed within this PUD are not currently allowed within the ordinance as a combination. So right now, the use of a convenience store is a legal and pre-existing non-conforming use, and it's permitted to continue no matter the outcome of this PUD request. What triggered this petition is that currently there is a use of overnight parking, which is not permitted within a convenience store use under the ordinance. So one of the ways that we reviewed this petition is under Chapter 811, which talks about the plan unit development and how we review the appropriateness of a proposed PUD. So I wanted to go ahead and throw this up on the screen. I think most of you are very familiar with this, but it's development that encourages flexibility, a harmonious and appropriate mixture of uses, and that it facilitates adequate and economic provision of streets, utilities, city services, etc. I think we've seen this recently before, so I'm not going to stay too long, but I like to reference the code that we're looking at here. So the site is located in Perry Township, Section 29. It's currently zoned pre-existing business, which pre-existing business is one of those unique zones under the ordinance, which allows, the businesses that existed before 1997 to continue existing in the intensity that they were at in 1997. It can stay within, a business can change, it can stay within the same category, but it cannot necessarily increase in intensity under the Chapter 802 use table. So this is the definition of the convenience store. So this is what is permitted under the pre-existing non-conforming Chapter 803. So any retail establishment offering for sale prepackaged food products, household items, gasoline sales, etc. So this is a pictometry photo from 2020. Here we can see a lot of truck parking. We see the main building and 2 fuel canopies. So a few site photos. The left is kind of a wide angle photo of looking at the main building. The right is looking at the petition sign, the view from Victor Pike looking at South 37, and also the sign that they put up trying to restrict overnight parking during this time. The petition did start as an enforcement case based on lighting and overnight truck parking. So they did put up a sign, try to limit people, truckers, drivers parking there. They did face some difficulties with having people, parking without their consent. The photo on the left is a picture of the back of the building. You can see that there are some utility crews that have found their way there and parked. The photo on the right is a slightly different angle of the back of the building in the convenience store area. So this is mainly looking south now. The bottom photo is looking north at the front of the convenience store. The top left is looking south at kind of the, not residential parking, but smaller vehicle parking. There has been crews, like utility crews, that have been parking there for a little while now. As they've been doing work in the area nearby, there are their vehicles that'll park there and then get in trucks and move on. So the comprehensive plan, this is under the Monroe County Urbanizing Area Phase 1 and 2. I included only the Phase 2 description because it seemed like it really encompassed the best description of this area. The Phase 1 is mainly just employment and is much broader and has a little bit more of a design standard idea. Phase 2 has a little bit more information about like the intended use, which is this area's high visibility from I-69 or 37, generally designated as employment, largely undeveloped, and additional employment-oriented development, preserving landscape character. Let's see. So on the top left is the current existing site plan as it exists. A little bit more helpful to look at an aerial image. So on the bottom right is site conditions with contours and buildable area, 15% slope. So it is mainly buildable area. We can see, most of the gravel parking lot, some of the area that's paved, and the existing structures, the building, and the 2 fuel canopies. So the packet was published last Tuesday, and we did get an update from the petitioner's representative on Tuesday, kind of late in the afternoon, a little bit too late to get a review in and include that within the current packet. So I did want to include some of their comments here. So the petitioner's representative, I know they'll speak tonight, but they did say that, they thought that the proposed uses within the PUD are not necessarily comparable to how I myself and with the assistance of my supervisors wrote the report, which is in compared to the truck stop / travel plaza, which is a conditional use under the zoning ordinance. And they said they think that it's not necessarily a fair use because the PUD is supposed to be specific and unique to the zoning ordinance. So at the last administrative meeting, I had a really good question, which was if staff, could staff, recommend approval of this petition? And staff cannot necessarily they cannot necessarily recommend approval of this petition because when I-69 went in, the use of a truck stop and travel plaza was created and defined by the planning department at that time. And since there are many similarities here, the only way to really review this plan unit outline plan is with our closest use, which would be the truck stop travel plaza conditional use. So this slide lists some of the proposed uses under the proposed PUD, which is what they call truck stop small. So it has the existing convenience store uses, overnight parking, which I will touch on this here in just a moment, but there have been concerns about overnight parking of trucks with trucks idling and running, creating fumes. So the newest update, which is included in your packet, I just was not able to review it within the report at times. So I went ahead, included the newest update of the outline plan, and the highlights, which it'll be the last exhibit within of that report. The changes have been highlighted in yellow. So to help us out a little bit as we try to compare, hopefully the next meeting I will have a good comparison, but for this last minute kind of comparison, highlighted in yellow. So for the overnight parking, the petitioners are proposing that it would only be with EPS, which is electrified parking spaces. So only plugged in, no idling at night. They're proposing that would be 5 to 10% of the lot area. They're also proposing an electrical vehicle charging station, which we don't have definition for under the current ordinance, a restaurant, which they call small, and then 2 accessory uses, which would be a residential dwelling and also seasonal sales. So this next slide are the same uses, but how we compared them within the report and how we compare it to Chapter 802. So existing convenience store uses, it's the same as the convenience store. That is what's pre-existing non-conforming. The overnight parking is still going to fall under the truck stop travel plaza. We don't have a definition for electrical vehicle charging. Restaurant, we don't necessarily have sizes on restaurants. For an accessory use of a residence, we either have a single family residential use or an accessory apartment. And then for seasonal sales, those definitions provided by the petitioner they fall under either temporary seasonal activity, which is a permit, or a roadside stand temporary permit. So this was heard by the Plan Review Committee in June. Some of the concerns, so the Plan Review Committee mainly focuses on looking at the comprehensive plan and how the proposed use relates to the comprehensive plan. One of the big concerns that we heard there was safety. So on the right is a series of images that I put together of trying to figure out where there are safe truck stops for drivers. I found a fairly accurate Android application that helps truckers find places that they can park overnight. And this location, that petition site, is the only one that was identified in Monroe County. That was one of the concerns that was discussed at the Plan Review Committee. Now, later in June, it was also heard at the Historic Preservation Board. Just to the south of the petition site is a property that is designated as historic. The neighbors discussed concerns about the view shed, the impact of the view shed from the Stip Bender farm. So that is the property highlighted in pink on the photo. The Stip Bender farm does currently have an application pending at the state for the National Historic Register. It's for a National Historic Register nomination. So to be nominated for a National Historic Register. We do have a proposed condition under staff conditions if this was considered approval. Some other concerns that came out of the Historic Preservation Board meeting was similar to the Plan Review Committee, so I'm not going to duplicate them. Things like lighting, which has been addressed, trucks idling, the fumes from trucks idling, etc. So we do have, within the packet that was published last week, we have 3 letters of remonstrance. And since publication, I have received 5 letters of, they've all been of support, but 5 letters since then. And it seemed appropriate to go ahead and share those. So I did email them to you before the meeting tonight, just in hopes that you would have the ability to read those before the meeting. So I'll leave these on the screen. I'm not necessarily going to read them. Overall, they're supportive of the business being where they are. There are comments of safety for truck drivers. And parking, there's 2 emails from foreman and I think the general manager. Let's see, next screen. Supervisor and general foreman of the Townsend Tree Service, which when I did do a site visit, I saw Townsend Tree utility trucks on site. So they are supportive of having this location to be able to park. They state it's convenient and safe. So hopefully all the Plan Commission members have looked at these a little bit beforehand. I'll leave this on screen for just another moment or 2. Hopefully they're large enough to read. Okay. So overall, staff recommends a negative recommendation to the county commissioners based on the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway Department and MS4 coordinator reports. To note, because I know I've spoken with a few people and I've seen in some letters that if this petition is withdrawn or denied by the county commissioners, the site will be required to remove the non-conforming use of overnight parking and conform to legal pre-existing non-conforming use of a convenience store. So I have seen some wording that they were afraid that the whole business would be removed, and I'd like to make that clear within this petition request. That it would be the non-conforming use of overnight truck parking that would have to be removed or cease and desist. Does anybody have any questions?
Do members of the Plan Commission have any questions for Ms. Crecelius? Mr. Pittsford?
Yeah, I put it in comments, but I decided to go ahead and ask the question so that I give Ms. Crecelius an opportunity to respond. Is not the adjacent historic site already near a major highway and within the view shed and the noise pollution of an interstate highway?
Yes, this property was purchased by the current owners and designated as a historic site after the site has already been existing pretty well as it is, I think about 4 or 5 years ago. So it is within the view of 37 and the petition site.
Right. So how does this proposal significantly change the view shed and the noise pollution potential for that proposed historic site, if at all?
I think mainly that this petition, this proposal, it offers an opportunity to maybe remedy a little bit more of a protection area for a historic preservation site. It does not.
What do you mean by a little bit more? I've been to lots of historic sites that are fairly adjacent to interstate highways. So, I mean, what is the mitigation effect of denying this? Is it significant? Is it moderate? Is it negligible? Or anywhere in between? Take your choice.
So if the petition is denied, say all large overnight truck parking is gone, they're going to have the same view. Nothing's going to change. They'll be legally allowed to run their convenience mart. There won't be large trucks parking. If it was considered to be approved, which I mean by kind of mitigating, is there might be an opportunity to hold the petition site to commercial site standards, which mean a little bit more landscaping, maybe a little bit more buffering from what we would see of large trucks or commercial vehicles.
But with no approval, isn't there the very realistic opportunity that, or likelihood, not opportunity, the very realistic likelihood that this business would not be able to survive in its present location without those added amenities because of decreased traffic that's resulted from rerouting of 37 to I-69?
That sounds like a great question for the petitioner's representative.
It's starting to feel like I've almost done this before.
Mr. Pittsford, do you have other questions for Ann, or do other members of the Plan Commission have questions for staff?
I think my questions are sufficient for my part.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. Mr. Tron Enright Randolph, and then Mr. Stainbrook.
So a lot of these things are usually precipitated by, people calling in and talking about kind of what's out of compliance. So complaint driven, there we go. Do we know how many people have actually called the office before this petition has kind of unfolded through the planning process? I mean, do we have a significant number of people that called in and complained about this particular use, or would it be like 1, 5, 10? I'll accept a ballpark answer if we have that even.
I don't think I can give you a quantity. We are complaint driven when it comes to zoning enforcement. So one of the things that did come up and trigger this petition, or at least the route of coming into this petition, is that there was no commercial site plan and that there was lighting that was shining on other residential properties.
So you can't answer the question, I guess, is that confidential? Or I was just wondering if a number of people called in complaining about that particular use of trucks staying overnight, maybe within this year, you know. So if you can't answer that, that's fine. Just curious.
John, we received a complaint in 2020, and it was, I'll look again on the number of neighbors that signed on it. Primarily was corresponding with one neighbor in particular, but the complaint was subject to the lighting had changed. So the lighting from the site was leaving and causing some impacts across the street. So we had advised the owner at that time to replace with downward facing lighting that's dark sky compliant. And then there was a complaint that vegetation right along Victor Pike had been removed. And so we had asked that they replace those at a 2-to-1 ratio, and that was completed. And then the final complaint was associated with some changes that had happened in the site over the course of, since 2005 to date. There had been a minor amount of grading on the site that may have encouraged additional, or may have allowed for additional room for truck parking. And then there was the obvious complaint of truck parking overnight. So we have been working with the petitioners from an enforcement perspective, and this is a remedy for that.
Right. Okay. So great. I'm glad you can answer that. That allows me to have the follow-up. So it sounds like there was some issues, and they moved forward with trying to comply with all the issues that were addressed, the lighting, some trees in the front. But then there was grading, and then that precipitated into the trucks being parked. So I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. So I guess it wasn't really a follow-up question. I just kind of want to clarify. So okay, thank you. It doesn't sound like we've had that many people calling in complaining about this, but I do appreciate having some numbers. Thank you.
Sure, and I'm looking back, it looks like there were 2 original names listed for the complaint. In the grading area, I just want to verify, it's just really close to the driveway off of Victor. You kind of see it's this area that looks a little bit disturbed, that the cursor is right around just that area right there. Yep. Thanks.
And that was from someone calling in and complaining. That wasn't from planning coming out here and observing that this particular use was ongoing? Like someone literally called about the trucks, right?
Yeah, it was a complaint.
Okay.
Okay, I think Mr. Steenbrook has his hand raised.
Mr. Steenbrook?
Yes, thank you, Margaret. I went by the site twice today. I guess that makes me an expert, maybe not quite, but there were probably a dozen trucks parked there. Business seems to be booming, but my own experience, and maybe I shouldn't say my experience, but my observation has to do with 2 truck stops with overnight at the intersection of 465 and Highway 37. And I wouldn't want to be living next there. There's a lot of commercial activity, but not of the kind that I would want to be found out to have been involved with. This overnight parking has a lot of issues. Maybe in order to ask a question after my speechifying again, how close are the residential areas or the homes? How close are the homes? There are things that overnight truck parking, there are issues that it will bring in, perhaps, if not carefully policed. So the question is, aside from the lighting, And incidentally, I don't recall any trees. Maybe I was speeding, but that's not for the record. I don't think I was. Most of the time, they're behind me trying to get the old man to move out of the way. So I think I could have seen. I don't know where the trees are. So maybe that's another question. Number one, how close are the houses to this? And number two, where are these trees? I guess that's for the planner.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook.
Where the houses are.
Do you have a photograph of that, Anne?
Well, I think we can probably see pretty well on this photograph, if you can see the mouse. There are sporadic homes to the east, which is this side. We got one here, and this is agricultural field. And then a row of houses to the south. And then this little, we have 2 residential homes, the Stipbender farm, another residential home, and then commercial buildings. And then for the most part on the west side of 37 is commercial. So let me
Now,
go.
and you young folks won't understand this for a while, but I don't have my eyeglasses on, so I can't really see that very distinctly. And then also, well, I do have my hearing aids on, but about what do you think that numbered, or what distance there as you pointed them out on the photographs? Are there 12 or 15 maybe? I'm a little bit like Tron asking for an approximate number.
I mean, just within the aerial imagery, I can see 11.
Well, thank you for that. And Ann, I know Tron or I, neither one, are trying to put you on the spot there. Maybe we should have gone by the, we have had these remonstrators, people that feel that this would detract from their enjoyment of their property as it is. Let's go on to the trees. Where are the trees?
I cropped out my scale bar, so I'm not sure how to give you a good scale, but I highly doubt that.
Are they on the front and along highway along the highway there, or are they along Victor Pike, or?
They're
I
along
don't see them on
Pike
Victor.
and Church Lane.
Oh, back here in the back. That would help to obscure the sight from these houses. I suppose. Oh, okay. I see trees back there, and I can make those out. Thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Owens.
Thank you, ma'am. These are general comments I have for consideration about this entire proposal. First of all, the historic farm was there before any highway was there, so it kind of gets, it kind of has preference, I think. But piling on doesn't make any sense to make it even noisier than it was. But as the map that was created shows, there are plenty of spots in Greene County for truckers coming north or going south, either way. The state didn't put any rest areas on North I-69 either. Trust me, I was on it last week. It was 95 miles between them. So it seems to be a problem with the state. And unfortunately, we end up with it. I think that we're responsible to our citizens and to our plan and our zoning, not to people who have other places to stop, including even big box stores. Truckers do plan ahead. They know where their stops are. They know when they can rest and so forth. That's just part of their jobs. And last, from a public health perspective, I'd like to say that I'm sure we all remember Scott County back in 2015, I think, that had the largest rural outbreak of HIV and hepatitis C in the country. And the CDC, when they took the diseases and checked where they came from, they proved that they came, along with the drugs that were being used there, they came from the truck stop that was right over in the interstate to the small town. And I think that's a consideration that I haven't heard yet, but I think it's one we should think about. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Owens. Well, if the petitioner is here and or the petitioner's representative, and they would like to address the members of the Plan Commission, we would like to hear from you.
This is Mike Carmen for the petitioner.
Thank you, Mr. Carmen.
Yeah. As Jackie, or I'm sorry, Jackie, was alluding to gently, we disagree with the comparison to the truck stop travel plaza. The term truck stop small was mine to put a name on it. Could have called it convenience store plus, could have called it anything, but the critical issue that was going to surface on this was truck parking. So I coined the term truck stop small because it is not a truck stop travel plaza. Jackie gave you a little bit of a chart. I don't know. I'm sorry. I apologize. I keep going to Jackie. I don't know if you can let me share screen to show a chart. Find a way. I can't. There you go. Thank you. That's exactly the one. So do you see the petitioner's representative slide? Is that displayed for everyone now? These are on the left side are the truck stop travel plaza uses. When you read the definition in the zoning orders, these are exactly what come from that. Truck wash, tire repair, barbershop, restaurant, shower facilities, motel, hotel, what amounts to an internet cafe, a trucker's lounge, TV, internet. Of all those things in a truck stop travel plaza, what this petition is seeking to do, the fuel cells, which is already permitted, that's not going away. That's not anything new or added. The restaurant had requested what I call limited restaurant, the limited seating to keep it scaled appropriately for the property. The convenience store Ann has already alluded to, doesn't go away. That's there. And we get to the bottom of the overnight truck parking being added. That is really what the petition is about. Now, I would say that we've withdrawn the request for waiver of the second meeting because you've got more information came in today. Actually, I received some additional information today. I'm going to do a write-up and add it to the petition, and want to get that in writing. I'll just touch on it tonight so you see what's coming, but we'll do it in writing where you have more opportunity to think about it, reflect on it, and see how that fits in. But the truckers are reaching out and they're asking for this to be approved, including the non-sleeping, not overnight. When we talk about overnight parking, I think what everybody's referring to is where they sleep in the cabs. Overnight static parking, no sleeping, nobody there is in a different realm. And there's actually received today some specific detail on that requesting, can you not allow that to continue, with an explanation for why that's important. And I'll do a write-up on that, and it won't take your time tonight on that. But, to compare what this PUD proposes to do to a truck stop travel plaza is like taking a coffee shop where we went out a bakery to it to make our own pastries. We're going to sell in the coffee shop, and that's what we're doing, and compare that to Kroger's. They can be compared, but it's not a logical comparison. What the truck stop travel plaza allows on 10 acres, if we wanted, is so far different from what's being proposed that I do not believe it's a fair comparison. What we're really analyzing is some limited overnight parking. The petition proposed to be limited in terms of number of spaces, 20 designated. The petition, not the original write-up, it didn't get in there. The amended one prohibits truck engine idling. Ann's chart indicated, and I may have misunderstood your chart. I read it to say that petitioner was proposing that the overnight parking have electrified parking stations, and that is not correct. We are not proposing that, and would oppose it. But if my write-up read that way to you, I will figure out what it is I said that caused you to read it that way, and I'll amend it and correct it. I apologize for that confusion if I've caused it. But no, we're not proposing electrified parking stations. The trucking industry is going through a lot of changes. The old need to idle engines all night long, particularly in cold weather, because the diesel fuel jellified or gelled. is pretty much a thing of the past. We don't see that now. The different fuels, better engines, better diesel fuel, the use of what is now referred to as the diesel emission fluid. It's a spray that goes in it that reduces emissions from the diesel engines. You cannot do that and idle the engine. It causes some engine problems. So there's a lot going on in the trucking industry. What you're finding now, the newer trucks, they come equipped with the battery, with the power source to operate the AC, to operate the heater as is needed. So they don't need to idle the engines. They come with a battery power. In fact, I think you usually find that mounted on the back of the cab, if you happen to see a cab without a trailer on it, so you can get a view of the back. So there's a lot going on in the trucking industry. Some states have, by law, outlawed the engine idling, California being one. And what happens in California tends to spread across the country eventually. And so you're seeing the newer trucks being manufactured with that in mind already, so that they're coming equipped with power packs. So what the petitioner is requesting, and there are reasons for it, is that I can't, and I won't attempt to put dollars on it, but yes, there's an income issue on that. They tend to fuel up when they park there, and they buy some food. I had a request today from a work crew that wants to park there and not overnight sleeping, just a work crew to keep the equipment there. When I asked why here and not someplace else, the answer was exactly that, because our guys like to fuel up while they're there and grab something to eat before they take their vehicles and hit the job site. And so there is some of an income issue there, and it's certainly a convenience. We're not going to see these truckers going to Salisbury to find a place to pull off and sleep. They will find a lane, shoulder, a berm, someplace to park long before they're ever going to get to Salisbury. And it's frankly, I'm not sure I could agree that that's even a reasonable answer to that issue, to what is about a 50-mile round trip to find some place to pull off and rest. When this is a good spot for it. This is really a very good spot for it. We've been doing some work on the history of the property and actually the truck parking. I'm now back to the mid-90s. That truck parking at this site has been an ongoing feature. Sales from this site, food product and other sundries being sold on this site, I can get data back to the 1990s now, so that this is not a new use. I'm going to have to talk with the planning staff and maybe get David Schilling involved. Ann's presentation on several occasions referred to the convenience store as a non-conforming use. It is not non-conforming. It's a permitted use within the PB zone. That's the nature of the PB zone. It was an activity that is carried forward under the PB zone, so it's not non-conforming. And the significance, the difference is that as a permitted use and under the definition of the PB zone, it even says in the definition, the use can be spread throughout the property, throughout the lot. It's not, if it were non-conforming use, it couldn't be moved, enlarged, or relocated on the lot. It would be fixed in place. And that's not true under the PB zoning. So we'll work on trying to clarify that. If I'm wrong, I'll ask David Schilling or to show me, or Larry Wilson to explain it, because I do believe I'm correct on that. It should not be deemed a non-conforming use. It is in fact a permitted use within the PB zone for this site. This did start out as an enforcement. It was our understanding that the only enforcement complaint came in was on the lighting. The petitioner had added some exterior lighting to the building, I think 8 fixtures, and they were not shielded. And the complaint came in, and a notice went out. And once petitioner had a chance to understand what was the nature of the complaint and what was needed, then all those light fixtures were replaced with shielded lighting, so that they're the night sky, dark sky friendly. It shields it from that projection across the property, which was the complaint from the neighbor, and a justified complaint. That not making any issue of that, but petitioner reacted appropriately, and it was taken care of. Petitioner was not aware that any restrictions on tree removal, and actually, I'm not sure, as another question on enforcement, but it doesn't matter. By the time anything I had a chance to talk to petitioner, and they asked for assistance on getting in compliance. They'd already made arrangements to replant the trees as requested on the 2-to-1 ratio, and then so that's been done. So we're down now to the parking, which is our understanding arose incidental to looking into the lighting complaint, not that the complaint itself was on overnight parking. If there was a complaint for that, petitioner is not aware of it. Certainly the notice letter from staff presented the parking, overnight parking as an issue some time ago. That is correct. So we're looking for the PUD because there is no zone that allows for this combination of uses, as Jackie noted. There is some precedent for looking at this and doing something as a way of creating a zone. You know, for those who've been around long enough and dealing with this, you can remember the tourist home, tourist cabin use that you have now in the ordinance arose out of an enforcement issue when these things were happening and being developed around the county. And actually planning staff looked at it. I remember Greg Zodi specifically talking about it. They looked at it and determined that apparently this is a use that is needed in the county, and they spent some time crafting a zoning ordinance and adopted what is we have now as your zoning, your tourist cabin, tourist rental use. And I would suggest that that same approach ought to be considered for this. There's a big gap between a fuel station, convenience smart, and a full-fledged truck stop travel plaza. It's a huge gap. First of all, the travel plaza requires a minimum of 10 acres. The travel plaza, as you can see on the chart that still, I believe, is displayed for you, there's all sorts of uses in that you do not want at a site like this, nor does the petitioner want them. But if the choice is only between a fuel station, convenience mart, and a truck stop, it's not a good choice. It's too narrow, and there are legitimate uses beyond merely the fuel station that would be done here. We asked for the accessory use for one residence as an accessory use is specifically defined and limited to an on-site residence use as an employee, manager, or owner. You know, in all honesty, if that's a concern and you don't think that's appropriate at all, just say so, it'll come off. That's on there not because this petitioner has plans to live on this site. He doesn't. His wife, they don't. They have their property, but it is certainly a realistic possibility that a future employee, a future manager of the property would choose to live on site as a single person. So I'd ask for the accessory use of a very limited one single residential use, an apartment built inside or as a second floor loft. But that's that. The real issue is to deal with the truck parking. So, you know, when we at the, this is at the PRC, I understand the desire not to turn those into public input meetings because they kind of got carried away, and even your admin committee meetings have gotten carried away with being full-fledged plan commission meetings with public input from petitioners and neighbors and whatever, and then you're trying to limit that. I understand that. But what ended up happening is now we go to the PRC meeting and there's some discussion, some negative, some I think factual mistakes, and had no opportunity to say anything. Then we go to the admin committee meeting, and actually it happened again. Some statements were made, the staff analysis was presented, and we were hand-tied. All we could do is sit and watch and listen. This is the first opportunity with you to engage in any kind of an exchange, and certainly welcome comments, feedback, but the ultimate goal is to allow a very legitimate business use at this site. It's designed for it. It works well. We've got a signalized intersection at Victor Pike and 37. We have a high demand for it, a request for it. I received today, and I will forward it to Ann for the packet for next time around, but I received today a 7-page fully signed petition of support for this, very specific on the uses and the support for it. And then when I go in that tonight, I will forward that to Ann so it can become part of the packet. But I mean, there's 7 pages of signatures on that. So is there support for what is being done here? Absolutely. Are there demonstrators? Absolutely. And so we're back to you to weigh the nature of the objections and the impact of those, and when you get to a decision, and we'll look for that another time. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to comment on truck engine idling, and I'll be done.
Mr. Carmen is.
I think.
I'm sorry, Ann. Mr. Carmen, are there other members of the petitioner present with you who would like to speak?
The petitioner is long on, but I don't believe he has anything additional. But I'm sorry, Mark, I was trying to say there was one other quick comment I want to make on that, just on the engine idling.
Yes.
There is a engine idling being prohibited for the overnight sleeping parking, there have worked up plans. How do we enforce that? That's the obvious question I think we'd have, including this petitioner has already been in contact with a parking lot heavy record towing service to patrol the parking lot. And if the truck engines are found idling, they're going to have authority to tow them because they would be unauthorized parkers. So there is a reasonable method to enforce the no engine idling. Thank you.
So Mr. Carmen, I still did not understand.
Petitioner is logged on, but I don't believe, unless he's raised his hand, I don't believe he had any comments he wanted to make.
Because there are members of the Plan Commission who have questions. So Mr. Pittsford and then Mr. Enright Randolph.
All right, sorry, I kept hitting the wrong button. Thank you, Madam Chairman or Chairwoman. I have a couple of things that are of concern to me. First of all, I'll begin by citing one of my American author favorites, and that's John Steinbeck said that in one essay he was looking for a clean, well-lighted place. And I think that's indicative of what some of these truckers are looking for. Regardless of Ms. Owen's very serious concerns regarding public health and safety, we already have a public health crisis in Monroe County. And it begins in the downtown area of Bloomington, where we have restaurant owners and other entrepreneurs operating businesses that are severely handicapped by people leaving hypodermic needles on the sidewalks and in their bathrooms and in public spaces. So this is not an invitation to a health crisis. It's not that large of a facility. Also, I would note that on North 37/Indiana or Interstate 69, gas stations and convenience stores are really not very accessible and convenient. If you're a trucker and you roll into Monroe County, you can forget about getting gas until you're in Morgan County, unless you want to get off the interstate and drive a few blocks into an area. Do we want more trucks coming off of 69 onto West 3rd, West 2nd Street, that area? Or would we rather them fuel up on the southern end of the county and drive all the way through the county without adding to the traffic congestion in the Highland Village area? That's just my question. And the last couple of questions I have is, can this current business really survive under the model that it has right now? If they're limited to only what they have now, a gas station, convenience store, are they really going to be able to fulfill the needs of the customers that are getting on and off of 69 right at that interchange? I think not. And the last thing is, with all due respect to Ms. Owens, do we want all of the interstate commerce of truckers to go to Greene County? I mean, because if that's our stated purpose, we may as well go ahead and put up a sign way down on 69 that says, don't plan on doing business in Monroe County because we have no place for truckers here. Those are some of my comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pittsford. And I will ask my fellow colleagues on the Plan Commission to reserve comments until after those members of the public have spoken in favor or in opposition to the proposal before us. Right now, if members of the Plan Commission have specific questions for Mr. Carmen, we could entertain questions of, for Mr. Carmen. So Mr. Enright Randolph, do you have a question for Mr. Carmen?
I always thought during this go around, we were allowed to have questions for the petitioner or staff.
We had questions for the staff.
I guess just didn't.
But it's okay, Mr. Enright Randolph, please go forward.
not to be disruptive, but
Thank
my
you.
time here at the Planning Commission, we've always kind of intertwined these to staff or petitioners because the staff presentation might provoke us to have a question to staff. Either way, I doubt either one is prepared for my question. I'll go ahead and ask it, but ultimately, if we do have a second round, I would like an answer. Under the current definition, the minimum parcel area and road frontage, the minimum parcel area for establishment of a new truck stop or travel plaza is 10 acres with at least 200 feet of dedicated road frontage on a major collector. They shall have a left and or right turn lane, or the developer will have to install one. So that's not verbatim, but that's basically what I guess section B states under the minimum parcel area and road frontage. So my question, and there's a lot of other factors that come in here. Let's just throw out steep slopes and maybe environmental overlay concerns, karst features and such. What would be the max number of truck stops someone could install? Now, if you have an answer, if you have a ballpark, that would be great.
Does staff or
I don't really
Lisa
think anyone's
Ridge
prepared
or-
for that question.
I'm-
So
I'm-
my question is to have that answered if we have a next hearing on this. And my point is how many truck stops could be permitted under this particular use? And are we really looking to have such a extensive truck stop versus these smaller, more genuine to the character of our community to provide safety and commerce exchange for our truck drivers? I just think the whole conditional use and thing needs to be rewritten. We wrote this when I-69 was coming through, and we were basically making it nearly impossible to have a truck stop or a travel plaza. And we're holding this whole pre-existing use to these new compliances or these new standards. And it just baffles the question, are we really going to put the safety of our truck drivers out there until another petitioner comes along that has 10 acres to develop? And then back to my question, how many truck drivers could then park there? So, I mean, I'm ready for our next question. I hope that we don't move hastily and this moves to a second hearing. And with only 6 members present, if 2 don't vote in favor, it will move regardless to a second hearing.
So
the waiver, the request of waiver final hearing was withdrawn, so it will absolutely be heard at the August hearing. So please definitely make your outstanding questions and concerns known to the petitioner's representative so that they can address them fully.
So I would also like to ask, is Lisa Ridge is present and the staff is present? Do you have answers for Mr. Enright's, Randolph's question?
I do not have a lot of history on truck traffic with interstates.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa Ridge. Okay.
Margaret, sorry, you got it muted somehow.
I would like to open up the floor to public comment, and those members of the public who are present and who would like to speak in favor of this petition, would you please raise your hand and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Looks like we have
Mr. Ryan and Vanessa Chloe.
Looks like Tina Rogers was the first one up, so they are unmuted right now.
Okay, Tina Rogers, you have 3 minutes. Thank you for coming tonight.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to hear me out. I am very aware that none of you have spent much time utilizing the station that we're talking about, just hearing some of the comments that were made. I have been utilizing the station since I built in the Highlands in 1997. I am now over on South Patricia Lane. I run a business that provides services to individuals with disabilities. We use this truck stop to have our meetings. We use this place to take our individuals to train them on how to use money and how to make appropriate purchases in the community. We frequently run to that store at all hours of the day, all hours of the night. I've sent my young children, my 19-year-old daughter started going there when she was 16. If someone's sick in the family at 3 a.m. and we needed medicine, no one ever feels unsafe there. We don't feel unsafe because we know that there are other people around. We know that those trucks are out back, and criminals do too. That deters them from wanting to be in and around that when there are other people who could be watching. I attribute part, excuse me, in response to Ms. Owen's comment, I think that's an irresponsible comment. And I do think it's an irresponsible comment because it doesn't compare in any way, shape, or form to what these people offer. And our drug problems are far beyond out of control downtown Bloomington. And my child went to the project school. I felt more uncomfortable letting him walk around there than I would have at that truck stop at 4 o'clock in the morning. The site that is supposed to be a historical site, wasn't that proposed to be a historical site after she purchased the home? She purchased that home knowing that that truck stop was there. She purchased that home, and when one complaint didn't get it what she wanted done, she then went to another complaint and then to another complaint. I fear that we're going to be held hostage by a woman who wants things the way that she wants them. And Ms. Owens, you spoke that we are responsible to the people in our community. She's one individual. I'm the one who put that petition together, and in 6 days, we had 7 pages worth of signatures supporting them. These folks house our Townsend trucks. Those are emergency management vehicles. Those people are contracted with the county and the city to do emergency management. They help keep our county up and running during tough times. This keeps them close. They not only have that, but these folks offer them to buy gas on credit at night when their cards don't work because they get shut off at 5 p.m. They don't have to do that. They want to see our community thrive, and they're here to help our community. Please, let's not be held hostage by one woman who wants things her way, who chose to move into that home, move into that community with an established business already there. What's next if she doesn't get away with this? The sewer facility? Maybe the racetrack. I'm sure she hears it because I do too. I've lived on the south side all my life, and I live on the west side of 69. I can't see it ending good. And Mr. Stainbrook, you wouldn't want to live in that area, so you probably wouldn't have purchased a house in that area. Thank you for your time, and I really hope you consider allowing everything to continue to run.
I would like to remind all people here to speak more respectfully of your fellow community members and to not do the name calling that we just heard. It's not welcome here. To speak in ideas generally is fine, but to do the bashing that we just heard is not welcome in our Plan Commission meeting hearings. And I just would like to make sure that that standard is set and adhered to. Mr. Ryan and Ms. Vanessa Clough, you're recognized.
Good evening. Thank you so much for taking time to hear from Ryan and myself. My name is Vanessa Clough. I am a resident of, or I have been in Bloomington now for about 20 years. Prior to that, we lived in Illinois. This is where we grew up. And my husband and I, prior to coming to Bloomington, actually commuted to the city for our work. If we would have had a place like Rosie and Pilo's to park our vehicle at night while we commuted with a small child, that's exactly where we would have parked our vehicle. Unfortunately, those options were not available to us, or we were not aware of them. So the fact that there is not a place, a safe place in Bloomington prior to Rosie and Pilo, speaks volumes to the community that they have built and developing a place where businesses and members of the community feel safe to go and leave their equipment, leave their property, knowing that it's safe for them. I'm sorry, I'm still collecting my thoughts. We have been customers for many years at the business. If you've not had a chance to visit the Sunoco. Now it's the Sunmart station. I would encourage you to. You would find that there is a strong, vibrant community there who, because of Rosie and Pilo, anytime that you go in there, you're greeted with warmth and kindness and generosity. We have a 16-year-old daughter who knows that there are trucks that park there at night, and she is not scared or concerned in any capacity, because we know that the people there are going to keep her safe, and it's never concerned us. Miss Owens' comments were disappointing because, as Mr. Pittsford had discussed earlier, was that this is a home, or this is a place for people to park their vehicles, but they're not actually staying there. The state police and Monroe County officers actually frequent the gas station regularly. And so, I would encourage you to just visit and to understand that it is a safe place, and the concerns that have gone up are disappointing and frustrating, because there is a community service going on. Further, Rosie and Pilo are also addressing both a gas and food desert in the area. Try coming up Bedford, there's not a gas station nearby. Try coming in from Monroe or Greene County, there's not a gas station nearby. And so the fact that you can't provide, or we can't provide as Monroe County residents, a safe place for these truckers to go is disappointing.
Thank you very much. I'd like to recognize Mr. Dick Kuntz.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. One of your constituents earlier recognized 465 and 37 truck stop. That truck stop holds well over 137 trucks a night, easily on a night. And it has a strip club right next to it. We are not talking about the same thing here. I mean, the Pilo and Rosie's truck stop is at most maybe 15, 20 trucks, and it does not cause that amount of anger for people. Let me put it elsewhere. I run a business nearby, and we have trucks come in all day long. They turn around that truck stop just to get down our road, which is right by there. And all them truck drivers drive from across the US all day long, every day. And they need that truck stop. They have to have that truck stop to rest. I mean, there's nobody else that nearby us that where a truck can pull in and actually do it. They can't go up to 3rd Street and pull off in Lowe's or Menards parking lot and just sit there. They have nowhere to go. The next stop is Crane Naval Station or in Washington. I mean, we need this business for our gas, for our food, for our family. We need this gas station. I'm not going to put much past that, because I'm going to get to where you don't want me to say bad things about people. So I'm just going to stop it there. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you for showing up tonight, and thanks for keeping it nice and community minded. Mr. Mike J.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak because I am one of the truck drivers that parks there. And I've been parking there for about 12 years. And the reason I park there is because I live in Bloomington. And if I didn't, I would have to commute in my personal vehicle all the way to Indy every day, and I wouldn't be able to do it. And there's about me and 4 other guys that park there, and we deliver fuel to all you people down there in Bloomington and the surrounding areas in Bedford. And if we're not able to park there overnight, there's going to be a lot more gas stations out of fuel, because that's a nice spot for us all to park right there. And we don't idle overnight. We pull in and park them and turn them off and lock them up. So there would be no idling. And I can see their point about some people coming in there and idling, because there's always some bad eggs in every profession. There are some real scummy truck drivers that come in there and throw their trash down and are a nuisance, and I see it. So I'm constantly out there, trying to pick up their trash so that we don't get kicked out of there. So, I mean, I don't know how we're going to resolve that problem as far as keeping the people coming in there that are causing the problems. But I mean, as far as most of us like to just park their vehicles there. There's some people that haul wood and trees and stuff, and we're all respectful of the property, and it's in our best interest to keep our spots there. So I don't know if they're just trying to get people to stop idling, or if there's not going to be any truck parking. But I mean, it's vital for us and everybody down there in Bloomington to be able to get fuel and their trees trimmed and all that. So we do need a good place to park, and there's nowhere else. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mike J. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Ms. Natalie Blaze, you're recognized.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm actually calling on behalf of my husband, Scott, and myself. We've been a neighbor of the Shell gas station for over 20 years through the current owners, Rosie and Pilo, and the prior owners. In our opinion, the gas station needs to have the overnight parking. We're very in favor of that. Over the past 20 years, we have not once, since we have lived here, had an issue with the semi-truck traffic that utilizes that space. They use it to have a clean and safe place to park when traveling. We've not had one issue. My children have grown up here. They have walked to and from the up to our road from directly across that gas station parking lot to get on the bus. We have never had an issue with anyone in anything not being safe there. And as a community, we would be doing a disservice to those who cart our goods all over this country. Many of them are our nearby local community members by not allowing them the opportunity to park there overnight. And what's happened since this issue has become a problem in the last year or so, all of them, not all of them, I don't want to overstate, but a lot of them are parking at exits along the interstate. We know that members of my family routinely travel south on I-69. We see daily up to 9 semi-trucks at the next exit south, parking overnight alongside the off and on exits. It's not safe. Jerry Pittsford's earlier comments were spot on. We are very much in support of Rosie and Pilo filing their claim. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blaze. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? If there are none, I'd like to open the floor to those in opposition. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please raise your hand if you would like to speak in opposition to this petition. Mr. and Mrs. Bush. You will each have 3 minutes if you both indeed would like to speak.
All right,
So let us begin.
All right. First of all, I want to say that my brother was a trucker for decades, and that he now is a trucker instructor and manager for a truck driving school. And we have consulted him regarding this petition. So I'm going to read on now. We are Patty and Dave Bush and live in the neighborhood near P&G Associates LLC. When we moved here in 1999, the petitioner's property was owned by Sunoco and operated as a gas station and convenience store. We consider that usage appropriate and value it today. However, we are opposed to PUO-21-1, truck stop small. We do not support extended time parking or overnight parking for tractor trailer rigs in any amount. The diesel exhaust is noxious and carcinogenic to humans. We spend many hours outdoors each day and night in every season and cannot avoid breathing these fumes. The petitioner's counsel states signage will prevent truckers from idling their engines. But how will drivers stay cool in hot summer and warm during the cold of winter? Many trailers require an auxiliary power unit, APU, for temperature-sensitive loads. These also operate by diesel. We question how time limits, numbers of trucks parked, and idling will be enforced by the owners and their employees. In recent history, it has not. We have smelled diesel exhaust on too many occasions. We are also concerned about trailers carrying hazardous waste and our exposure should an accident occur. For the health and safety of our neighborhood, we urge you to vote no. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Mr. Bush, do you wish also to speak?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Jeff Morris, if you would like to speak.
Hi there. My name is Jeff Morris, and I live across the street from the entrance to the gas station on the historic property that's been mentioned a few times tonight. I wanted to start by saying that the fact that we live in a historic property is unrelated to our concerns. The fact that we're listening to trucks idling overnight is irrelevant as to whether we live in a historic house or not. The idling trucks vibrate our house at night, despite the fact that we rarely hear traffic from State Road 37 inside our house. I'd also like to say that I support the gas station and the current permitted uses of it. It's convenient to have a gas station nearby, and I was a frequent customer before the pandemic kept me indoors. The owners are some of the most hardworking people I know. I know I've heard rumors, and at one point there was even a sign hanging in the convenience store saying that neighbors are trying to eliminate the station. I can't speak for other neighbors, but I know for myself there was never an attempt to get the gas station shut down, nor did I ever hear of such a petition. I've heard of the change.org petition to support the station that was mentioned earlier, but from what I've seen online, that petition is misleading based on the fact it led signers to believe that the gas station was going to be shut down. With all this said, the overnight parking situation has reached a point where I can no longer speak in favor of that continuing. When we first bought our house 4 years ago, the parking situation was tolerable and we could rarely hear any noise. However, as the parking lot was expanded closer to residential properties and I-69 was completed, it became a more common occurrence to hear trucks idling in the middle of the night. About a year ago, a no parking sign was placed at the entrance in an attempt to enforce the zoning. That has helped, but overnight parking has continued. More recently, cones that were meant to block parking spots have been moved on a regular basis, and trucks are once again parking adjacent to residential properties. Given that enforcement is already difficult and overnight parking isn't supposed to be happening, period, I don't feel that allowing some overnight parking is going to make enforcement any easier. Enforcement guidelines look good on paper, but do nothing to help the neighbors who continuously have to listen to refrigerated trucks or other diesel engines idling nearby in the overnight hours. The other thing I'd like to point out is that I've taken a close look at the Monroe County Truck Stop Travel Plaza conditional use, and I feel like it's very well written and goes a long way in protecting neighboring properties around a truck stop. However, it seems like many of those requirements that protect neighbors are missing from this proposal to create the new designation of truck stop small. Regardless of what the proposal is named, at the end of the day, the request is for truck parking. I have no problems with trucks coming in during the day to fuel up and get food. I respect and support the hard work of everyone in the trucking industry. The other requests in this proposal don't concern me, but I simply cannot support overnight parking. Thank you all for thinking of the surrounding neighborhood as you consider this proposal.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for speaking. I think Mr. TC, if you would, or Miss TC, if you would like to speak.
Guy Loftman is up next.
Oh, okay. Mr. Loftman, welcome back. You have 3 minutes. We don't hear you yet.
Okay, I think I got it.
Yes, you do.
Thank you. Any talk about this station failing we would need to see a real financial analysis to see how big a problem it is. And with COVID, of course, that's dramatically hurt every gas station in the United States. And we shouldn't trigger an inappropriate response because of what could be a relatively short-term problem. COVID, we've already seen traffic come back. Nobody seems to have mentioned that when trucks park overnight, the drivers are going to need, going to have face the call of nature. Hopefully, they will go inside to use the bathroom instead of just finding some convenient place in the parking lot. That generates wastewater. If this is preliminarily approved tonight, which I oppose, please do not waive the final hearing, and don't consider final approval unless the water use is shown to be within the rated capacity of the septic system. Health Department records show the permit was issued in 1990 with a wastewater flow of 1,200 gallons per day. Please require petitioner to provide monthly water bills showing usage amounts for 2018 and 19 to pre-COVID years, as well as 2020 and 2021. If any of those months show average daily use over 1,200 gallons, it adds great urgency to denying the petition and vigorously pursuing enforcement of the existing ban on overnight truck parking. Require production of those records by July 23rd and make them available to the public so we can analyze them ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Loftman. The username TC.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and welcome.
Thank you. This is Tamby Weichel Cassidy. I just want to say a few things about remonstrance of this petition. I grew up 2 houses away from this, what was originally a gas station, gone convenience store. And I will say, like the other remonsters, that I do support having a convenience store there and a gas station, but I do not support overnight parking. I was chased by a man one time, and he was from the gas station. And I give credence to myself for getting away from him because I knew the area enough to know what fence to jump. And so I do think there is definitely safety to be considered for overnight parking. I also am concerned about wastewater. If you have overnight, you have showers, you have toiletry, especially if you're not providing power to a unit that has its own in a truck. And I think too that you should highly consider the number of deaths at the intersection of 37 and Victor Pike, historically speaking. So I don't believe if I still lived in my parents' home, I would not appreciate the trucks idling there, but I no longer live in that home. But I can say if I were one of those neighbors in that residential neighborhood, which it's very highly residential, so please consider that. I would not approve of that overnight. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamby, for sharing your story and for showing up tonight. Thank you. Now, Mr. Dick Kuntz has already spoken, but perhaps his wife is here or another person under his username.
She is. Just a minute. There you go.
Hi, my name is Natalie Kuntz, and we moved down here 7 or 8 months ago and stayed close to where the gas station is. And Rosie and Pilo have been a perfect partner to our community since we've been here. And the amount of wrecks that have happened since I've been down here, which has been very limited, have been zero to none. I've seen very few. The passenger vehicles have been one that I have seen, and that might not be a good thing to say, and I am so sorry. But the gas station truck stop provides an integral part to this community that we need to have here, and need to be able to help flourish and provide income and resources to this county. And if we take that away from them, we are taking away income and benefits from this community that we need to have. And talking about the health hazards and things along those lines, and you can't equate what happened in other counties to our county and what is going on here. And it's absurd to even say those things, or to think those things, or to try and put those things into place and make those a reality, because that is not the truth. Because Rosie and Pilo do not operate a facility that harbors that or promotes that or condones that. They take care of their property, they monitor their property, and they do everything they possibly can for this community to make sure that the best things are going on and they're providing the best service they can possibly provide. And to take that away from them is just heartbreaking and horrible. And to have one person, or one that might be stepping out of line, one row of houses in a certain area saying that they are doing something bad, which they're not, is just absolutely horrible to think and to put on them, because they're doing something good for our community, our county, and our town, to make sure we're thriving and we're providing services that need to be provided, income that we need to have in this community to keep going. And I'm done. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for showing up tonight. But this section of tonight's discussion is right now for those who are opposed to this petition. Is there any other member of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? I see no hands raised, so I bring it back to members of the Plan Commission for further discussion. Is there any member of the Plan Commission who would like to make any points or speak again about this petition?
Mr. Pittsford had his hand up first, and then I have my hand, and then Dee Owens has hers.
Great. For some reason, the panelist disappeared from my screen. So yes, Mr. Pittsford.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tron. I appreciate that. My first question is for Ann. Is there a prospective sewer connection in that area? Is there a possible for that to be served by city sewer? I realize there is a wastewater treatment facility adjacent to this property. So is there any prospective sanitary sewer connection there in the future?
So I have not heard of a prospective sewer connection. They are currently on a commercial septic, and they have stated within their outline plan that if they do any expansion or updates like their small restaurant, they will make sure that their septic commercial is up to date or expanded.
Okay. And then my second question is maybe more than a little bit facetious, but I'm on septic here, and I know what happens when my septic tank exceeds capacity. It doesn't outflow into my yard, it inflows into my house. Is that consistent with the commercial application? So if they're exceeding their septic capacity, aren't they just endangering the interior of their business structure. And bear in mind, I'm the son of a plumber, so I understand the basic rules of plumbing. And it may roll downhill, but not when the tank's full.
Well, then, Jerry, you know that, as planners, we administer a whole lot, but we're not necessarily experts at everything. So I would think that Michael Carmen could probably give you a better answer as to what might happen if things go downhill or not goes very well for them.
Well, you can bring Mike on as a lawyer, but I can tell you as somebody who lives with the septic system and the son of a plumber, that when the septic tank's full, nothing flows downhill anymore. But I'd love to hear Mike Carmen's opinion on this, just because he's getting paid to be here.
This is Mike Carmen, if I may respond to Jerry.
Yes, please, Mr. Carmen.
Jerry, I'm not going to disagree with you on the directions things flow, but the petitioner has a business practice of having the septic tank pumped on a regular basis. So it's not, I could tell you there's any experience of what happens because it's never been allowed to happen because they maintain the septic system. It's not in the ground and forgotten. It's regularly pumped and maintained.
Well, a pump system is significantly different than what you would have with the normal gravity flow or force flow system, or even a Presley system. So I think that comment is really more illuminating than what I expected. And I appreciate the fact that you understand the dynamics of the flow of wastewater.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pittsford. So I don't remember who you said was next, Mr. Enright Randolph, if it was you.
It was.
Thank you, Mr. Enright
Still
Randolph.
has her hand up.
Okay, great.
I'll just add to that last question. I think the health department might have the ability to weigh in a bit on this. So I'm just going to suggest to planning staff, reach out to the health department because they deal with septic issues. They're the ones that issue the septic permit. So they're the ones that kind of get notified for septic issues. So maybe you could even get a better answer. But I'm going to suggest reaching out to our health department to see if they could even weigh into it. That's a very tricky question he asked. Mine's
So
going to be, yes, please.
The Plan Commission could request that the petitioner provide a real estate inspection, and that could provide info. That'd be a good request if you wanted.
I'm not in a position to want to request that from the petitioner, but if Jerry so wishes, I would support his proposal. My question would be more overall, since we're comparing this to a truck stop travel plaza. I'm more generally curious in our overall zone that may permit this use. Do we actually have areas that are zoned correctly, that are 10 acres, that have that 200 frontage dedicated, where we could even permit a truck stop / travel plaza in Monroe County? And if so, I wonder how many feasible places that we could even permit something like this. I do know that we have to permit this, so I'd start double checking pretty quick, because if we start eliminating our only options, I think someone's going to come in here and evaluate it themselves. So, like, I would like some feedback on our next go around on that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. Ms. Owens?
Yes, couple things. I would like to say, first of all, that at no point did I ever disparage the owners, nor would I. The research is really clear, and it has been for many years, and this is my field, that increased drug traffic comes with interstates, just automatically. That's how it works. And truck stops are vectors for that traffic. That part of my commentary was factual. That was not my opinion, although I had some. It's certainly not detrimental to the owners, but perhaps to some of the clientele, as even the trucker from Indianapolis who spoke and mentioned about having to pick up after people and so forth. So that's what that public health piece was about. But I would ask, I've heard it alluded to that it sounds like the place is going to go out of business or something if overnight truck parking isn't allowed. And yet the paperwork says that even if there is overnight truck parking, they won't be charged for it. So what exactly would be different from a business model perspective that would cause them to go out of business? I don't know if anybody has an answer to that, but I'd be curious as to why that makes a difference in their business right now. Are they going out of business, or I mean, how long has that station been there? It's been there a long time. So I'd be curious as to anybody that has a response to that. Thanks.
So if they're, Mr. Pittsford, I'll recognize you again. Thank you.
Well, I'm not the petitioner, but I really feel like that we need to make the point that the incentive for truck traffic to stop there without the potential for long-term or even overnight parking being eliminated. If I was a long-haul truck driver, I simply would not include that on my stop list. And quite honestly, and I've driven down I-69 going south many times and gone north, even with the construction, it's a little bit dicey right now, but I have made that trip. But as far as I can see right now, if I was a long haul trucker, there's no way I would stop anywhere in Monroe County. There is absolutely nothing between, say, Washington and Martinsville that would be appealing to a long haul trucker in terms of stopping. And while this business has not subsisted on big truck refueling, diesel and the like, obviously with the rerouting of 37 and I-69, that interchange, it puts it in an island. So it's only capturing the traffic coming from south on 69, looking for one more refuel point before they head to Indianapolis or Morgan County, or when they're coming south from Lawrence County with very few opportunities to stop between Lawrence County and this point, Monroe County. So while I may not be a businessman or a demographics expert on where truckers stop, I just feel like that this business would suffer unnecessarily without this accommodation. And those are some of my comments. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pittsford. And because Ms. Owens asked a very specific question, I will give the petitioner's representative an opportunity to respond to her question about the business model aspect. And if Mr. Carmen is here and would like to address her questions directly, I'll provide that opportunity now.
This is Mike Carmen. Petitioner did not raise the issue of the financial stability of the business. That came up through other comments, and I'm not sure how to answer this. So I do not intend to make petitioner's financial circumstances a matter of public record. I don't think it's appropriate. It's anybody's business. The business will not fail. Petitioner will not let it. It may be hard to do. He may be working. He may be cutting. He may end up cutting back on employees and do work even longer hours than what he already works, which are long enough. But he's a survivor, and this will survive. That is not going to happen. It's not going to fail. The business that's generated through the truckers and the parking there, fuel and food sales, is important, but it is not. It's not a cornerstone that without it, it's going to crumble. So yes, would like to keep it, would like to keep the revenue that does produce. It certainly helps and it is important, but it's not going, the business is not going to fail because frankly, the petitioner's just not going to let it. You find a way to survive and he will. That's.
Thank you, Mr. Carmen. And Ms. Owens?
Yes, and thank you very much for that, sir. I'm trying to figure out where the sticking point is. I mean, as far as my read of the business goes, whenever I see it, it looks busy. And I drive long, difficult vehicles. So I understand how hard it can be just to find a place to get gas, much less big enough to position yourself to get that gas. And this station provides that, and that's valuable. And I don't know, I don't hear anybody saying that that's not valuable, that it continues on doing the business it is. So where is the sticking point? It's the overnight parking sticking point. And yet earlier, I thought I heard it said that that's not part of it, but yet that's in the paperwork. So I'm trying to figure out what the sticking point is. Nobody's saying trucks can't come in there and get gas and eat and buy things. What's the issue?
Thank you very much, Ms. Owens. Well, I think that if Mr. Carmen would like to answer that question, I would allow that.
Okay, this is Mike Carmen. I'm sorry I did not make myself clear earlier because I was trying to actually answer that before Ms. O's even asked the question again. So I'll be slower but I'll be brief. The sales of fuel to truck drivers who park there overnight and food product is an important source of revenue. It is not a make or break source of revenue. It certainly allows for some flexibility in what the business does. The staffing, the hiring, how many hours that Charian and has to work at this station and his wife, but they work long hours anyway, and then they'll do it. So the best I can do to answer Ms. Owens' question is to say that the sales to the parking vehicles, not just the transit traffic, but the parking vehicles is an important source of revenue, but it's not the end all. Okay, I don't know. Maybe I hope that answers the question. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carmen. Are there any other members of the Plan Commission who have questions or further discussion? Mr. Enright Randall.
Just one comment, because someone from the public spoke, indicated they moved in 1998, and you know, I'm looking at an aerial at 1999. Sorry, I'm looking at aerial from 1998, and when you kind of look at one of the areas, I think where they did some grading and they have expanded maybe the intensity of these trucks parking there. I won't disagree with that or argue. It clearly shows some trucks parked there. I mean, I don't know if they're staying overnight. I mean, so, you know, I'm just someone that is very detail oriented and has the ability to find a lot of information. And so I wanted to look at the 1998 aerials, and you can clearly see there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 larger vehicles. Some are clearly trucks, and the others might be like more, you know, mechanical type trucks, like cement trucks or whatnot, construction, maybe kind of equipment. You can't indicate exactly what it is, but it just shows me that, you know, they may not have known that trucks may have been there until the intensity started to grow. And I'm not discounting that. I'm just clarifying kind of what my observation is on the 1998 aerial. And when you compare it to, you know, 2019, they have expanded that use quite significantly. So I'll just go ahead and be complete transparent with my evaluation of the 2 aerials I see. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and if we have finished our discussion among ourselves, I think it's time for a motion. If anyone would be so kind to make it.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford.
Not sure it's going to get any support, but I'll make the motion. In case number PUO-21-1, planned unit outline located at 5100 South Victor Pike, consisting of 4.19 plus or minus acres, located in the MCUA, Monroe County Urbanizing Area, phases 1 and 2, phase 1 being employment, and phase 2 being South Side employment. I recommend approval, or I recommend that we move it forward with a positive recommendation, not approval, but move it forward with a positive recommendation along with the waiver of final hearing, even though petitioner did not request that. That is my motion.
Is there a second?
I mean, I'll second it, but I know what the outcome's gonna be.
Okay, I'll call the roll. The request is on PUO-21-1, and it's sending a positive recommendation to the county commissioners with a waiver of the final hearing. And the vote yes is a vote to send forward with a positive recommendation. Amy Thompson?
No, because Mr. Carmen and staff both indicated that they had additional information they have yet to share with us. So, no.
Dee Owens?
No.
Jim Stainbrook?
No.
Jerry Pittsford?
Yes.
Margaret Clemens?
No.
Okay, so the motion, or sorry, John and Wright Randolph?
I mean, I favor the petition. Even with additional information, I'm still going to favor the petition. So yes.
Okay. The motion fails at a vote of 2-4.
Okay, so then that will be heard at our next Plan Commission meeting. So I would like to thank everyone, members of the public, and also the petitioner and the petitioner's representative and staff for all the time they put into this proposal and this petition. And also for our fellow members of the Board of Commissioners, so because of all the thoughtfulness and all of the experience that you bring in the deliberation over this issue. So I want to thank everyone for their involvement. And we have reached the hour of 9 o'clock. And so we're at a point in our deliberations this evening where we vote among ourselves whether to continue hearing the rest of the petitions or if we continue for a certain amount of time. It's 9 o'clock. We finished this last petition. There's still quite a bit on the agenda. And if we vote to end the meeting, these items would be continued, or they would be picked up at the next meeting. So Jackie, could you please call the vote on whether or not we end tonight's meeting at this time?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
I will note, just for clarity's sake, that the August Plan Commission agenda is fairly long currently. So these would all go to the August agenda. Okay. This is a vote to proceed with the meeting. Dee Owens.
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook.
I'm sorry, Jackie. I lost the. Yes, I did for a moment. What's the motion before us?
The motion is to continue on with the rest of the agenda on tonight's meeting.
No.
Okay. And just to clarify, Dee Owens, you voted yes to continue with the meeting tonight.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, she's a lot younger than I am.
Jerry Pittsford,
I vote no with two statements. One, that if the meeting continues, I will be leaving. And two, that I would make a motion for a special meeting be held to address all of the remaining items on this agenda before our next meeting. But my summary vote is no.
Margaret Clemens,
No.
okay. Tron and Ray Randolph,
Geez, what was the tally we have?
it's already
Just
3
vote,
to no.
Ron.
It's already 3 no.
It's already 3 no.
Yeah.
I'll go with no.
Okay, and then Amy Thompson.
I apologize to all the folks who have hung on for this long, but I vote no as well. And I agree with Jerry that a special meeting to shorten the potential length of the August meeting would be a good idea.
Dave Schilling, if you're still on the call, could we go ahead and consider continuing this meeting to the administrative meeting?
Should we vote on that? I mean, should there be a motion to vote on
Yes,
whether or not
yes.
we have a special meeting or have it as part of our administrative meeting? So, Mr. Pittsford, if you would like to make that in the form of a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I was all prepared to do that. At this time, I would move that the balance of tonight's agenda be moved forward to our scheduled administrative meeting, which is to be held on August the 3rd, and that no other items be added to that agenda as part of an administrative meeting, and that it would be held strictly as a continuation of this scheduled action meeting. I don't know, what is the term, Jackie, for this meeting? It's not administrative, it's
It's a regular meeting.
or right, exactly. That the August 3rd meeting would be held as solely a continuation of this regular meeting of the Monroe County Plan Commission. That is my motion in sum.
Second.
Okay, I'll call the roll. D. Owens. D, you're on mute.
That's because I lost the call somehow. I hit the wrong button. I'm going to vote no on that because we do have administrative business, and I don't, that part of it, I vote no. I vote yes to continue it, but no to that part. So I guess you can't do that, right? So no.
Jim Stainbrook.
Well, I generally hope I don't offer explanations, but I think Dee's point. Well, I'll vote no in view of what Dee's shared.
Jerry Pittsford.
I'm voting yes with the idea that we can always schedule a special meeting for administration purposes.
Margaret Clemens.
I'm also going to vote no because we have administrative business to take care of. And I would also like to thank the members of the public who turned out tonight. I'm sorry the agenda was long and that we didn't get to everything. But thank you for your interest and your involvement. But my vote is no.
John and Ray Randolph.
Well, at least you couldn't hear me just abrupt words because I was on mute this time. No.
Amy Thompson.
Yes.
Okay, the motion fails.
Well, if I could make a motion, Madam Chair.
Could we ask Jackie how loaded our administrative business is?
Sure.
Oh.
Well, Dee wanted to make a motion as well.
Yes,
know.
I asked. Thank you. I would like to make a motion that we continue this business to the administrative meeting on August the 3rd without the caveat that no other business takes place that day. In other words, that we do the administrative meeting stuff that we also need to do then.
I'll second.
All right. I will call the roll. Jim Stainbrook,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsburgh,
No.
Margaret Clemens,
No.
Jeff McKee, or sorry, Tron and Ray Randolph,
Yes.
Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Dee Owens.
Yes.
Okay, the motion fails 4-2.
Okay, so I think then at this point in the meeting, I think that there should be a motion to adjourn.
Sure, unless you give me the ability to do one more motion, Madam President, that may allow us to address the public in a timely fashion, or do our business in a timely fashion.
Of course you can.
I would like to make a motion that we move this to our admin meeting, and we only, if you could go back up to the agenda, we only deal with petitions and not the administrative business that is outlined, in hopes that this will lighten our load, allow us to do our admin meeting. Could you go to the agenda? Because we have a lot of administrative business below that, right? So what petitions did we not hear today?
I believe this motion was already voted on. This same idea was voted on and
What was
rejected.
I recall seeing administrative business on the agenda that outlines other amendments to our ordinance, but
That's not administrative. That's a matter of public.
right. I was going to. I'll just withdraw my motion. My goal there was to do the public's business that has the public involvement with their petitions at our next administrative business, and that was it. And we leave the ordinance discussion for our next go around. But I'm just going to pull back and withdraw my motion.
Well, if members of the Plan Commission at the next full meeting of the Plan Commission would like to limit the petitioner or the petitioner's representative, a motion could be made at the beginning of the meeting so that we can move through the cases. And other than that, I feel as though tonight, it was a very heavy agenda, and we were taxed by some of the controversy in it. And for that, I apologize. I apologize to the members of the public who are here for more simpler issues, but I feel that this meeting has come to its natural conclusion. And if we would have a motion to adjourn, we hope to get through things at our next meeting.
So
I move to adjourn, Madam Chairwoman. With the hope that at the administrative meeting, we can call a special meeting of the Plan Commission to address other administrative issues that will not be addressed at that meeting. That is my motion in sum.
That's an excellent idea, and maybe perhaps we could have 2 meetings in a row at our regular meeting, maybe one night after the other, and just have a Plan Commission palooza or something like that at our next meeting. But the motion has been made to adjourn and to consider at our administrative meeting, a special meeting. And I really appreciate everyone's perseverance tonight. And if there is anyone opposed to adjourning, please state so at this time.
Madam President, if I may be indulged, just one last comment. I want to thank
Certainly.
staff for bearing with us. I know these meetings are extraordinarily difficult for Plan Commission members, but they're equally difficult and taxing for our staff. And I just want to give them our highest acclaim and appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to all, and to members of the Plan Commission, to the staff, and to the public. Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone.